Are you that confident? Kyoraku Shunsui glanced at Muyang. You will know in a while. Muyang did not answer directly, but said to Kyoraku Shunsui indifferently, then turned and walked in the original direction. Come with me to see what I want to say first. Kyoraku Shunsui glanced at the direction where the Ryuryoku came from. He shook his head slightly and did not speak. He just pressed his bamboo hat and turned to follow Muyang. He was very interested in what Muyang said. Moreover, this route seemed to be going to that place. Central 46 room. Kyoraku Shunsui looked up at the building in front of him. The people living here were Soul Society's elders. Ordinary people were not allowed to disturb them. Even the captain was not allowed to approach without a summons. What was the meaning of Muyang bringing him here? Kyoraku, don't you feel that the behavior of Central 46 is very strange this time? Muyang stood in front of the gate of Central 46 room and said to Kyoraku Shunsui. Even if it is a big crime to secretly pass Shinigami's power to humans, it is not to the point of being executed, not to mention that the sinner is the adopted daughter of the Kachiki family. And if it is just to investigate such a small matter, there is no need to ask the captain to personally make a move, let alone the order of Central 46 room. Such a small matter is not enough to alarm the elders of Central 46. You mean? Hearing Muyang's words, Kyoraku Shunsui also had a guess in his heart. He was originally a very sharp and smart person, but he was too lazy to think about it. Now that Muyang suddenly appeared and looked for him, he quickly knew what Muyang was going to say. Not only that, but he also had a vague guess about the matter in his mind. Under the circumstances where there were all kinds of doubts, Muyang took him to the Central 46, which showed that there was a problem with the Central 46. What do you want to do? Kyoraku Shunsui looked at Muyang and asked. No matter what, this was the Central 46th room, and he had to be careful in everything here. Just come with me, but no matter what happens later. Don't get too excited. Kyoraku Shunsui stared at Muyang for a while, and the expression on his face was slightly solemn. Muyang's tone did not seem to have anything good. After hesitating for a while, Kyoraku Shunsui nodded and did not say anything else. With his years of cultivation, it was really difficult for ordinary things to make him have a big emotional fluctuation. Even if he saw that all the people inside were dead, he would not have much emotional fluctuation. Seeing Kyoraku Shunsui nod, Muyang was also relieved. He knew that Aizen had already killed all the people in the Central 46. If he did not talk to Kyoraku Shunsui first, who knows if he would have any radical behavior later. Muyang raised his hand and pulled out Zanpakuto from the sheath on his waist. What are you going to do? Seeing Muyang's action, Kyoraku Shunsui was stunned. It was known that this was the Central 46, not a place to act rashly. It's nothing. I just wanted to open a passage to enter. Well, I say, Kimura, you are anxious too. Are you going to break in directly? I didn't say I was going to break through the door. Then what are you doing? Kyoraku Shunsui stopped speaking halfway and looked at Muyang with surprise. More accurately, it was the crack in front of Muyang. Muyang stood there, Zanpakuto in his hand waved gently, and then a bright white crack appeared in front of him, extending into a passage, or an independent space. The crack was set up by Muyang's Zanpakuto. Although it passed through the door of the Central 46, it did not destroy the door. There was no emergency mechanism at all. However, the passage in front of him led to the back of the door. Kyoraku Shunsui could even see what was behind it. The passage and the door seemed to be in a different space. This is the power of space. Kyoraku Shunsui took a deep look at Muyang. Although he saw Muyang's ability in that night, he didn't expect that he could do this to such an extent and casually build a space channel. Let's go. This can only be maintained for a short time. Muyang ignored Kyoraku Shunsui's shock and directly took the lead to walk inside. Although it seemed easy to build such a short-distance space channel, the time it could last was limited. Moreover, it was just a look. It was not easy to build a space channel that could lead others through. This is. Just as Kiraku Shunsui, who had just followed Muyang, walked into the Central 46, he immediately let out a depressing sound. Inside, those elders and judges who were supposed to be high and mighty were all lying in a pool of blood. No one could feel any vitality on their bodies. The people of the Central 46 were actually all killed. Swish. Kiraku Shunsui moved his feet and appeared next to a corpse not far away. After squatting down and sizing it up, Kiraku Shunsui stood up and said with a serious face, "They have been dead for a long time, at least 3 days." As soon as he finished speaking, Kiraku Shunsui seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and his face became a bit more serious. Since the time of what happened here was 10 days ago, that is to say, all the news released in the name of the Central 46 is false. It's a setup. Hearing Kiraku Shunsui's analysis, Muyang snapped his fingers and said, "What is the enemy planning?" After confirming the matter, Kiraku Shunsui whispered. The matter was about to be clear. Although he did not know who did all this, Kiraku Shunsui knew that the other party must be the enemy. No matter how dissatisfied Kiraku Shunsui is with those old bastards in the Central 46, they belong to the Central 46 Soul Society's highest power organization. This point will never change. The person who dares to trample the dignity of the entire Soul Society is their biggest enemy. Ha! At this time, Kiraku Shunsui suddenly noticed a trace of abnormality. Just as he was about to take action, Muyang had already arrived in front of him. Seeing Muyang's action, Kiraku Shunsui's body tightened. He did not completely trust Muyang. Now the other side suddenly had such a move. Subconsciously putting his hand on Zanpakuto, Kiraku Shunsui's eyes flashed a glimmer of light. He looked at Muyang warily, but saw that when Muyang came to his eyes, he did not make any movements. The space around their bodies suddenly wrinkled, like folded up, forming an interlayer to wrap them up. No one. The knife cut through the air, and Senkaname took back his Zanpakuto, and looked puzzled. Although he was blind and could not see anything, his senses were much sharper than the average person. Just now, he clearly felt that there was someone here, but the feeling of Zanpakuto swinging down earlier clearly told him that there was no one here. He turned his arm and slashed again. In the end, it was naturally empty again. Tosen frowned. For some reason, he felt like he was being watched. Moreover, the gaze that was watching him came from before his eyes. However, the previous 2 tests told him that there was no one in front of him. Kiraku Shunsui felt very wonderful at this time. He was clearly standing there with Muyang, but Tosen's slash could not cut them at all. His 2 slashes clearly seemed to cut his body, but they could not cut him no matter what. This strange sense of shield even made him temporarily suppress the shock that Tosen was going to bring him. "I think you have figured out a lot of things now." Muyang suddenly turned his head and said to Kiraku Shunsui, which surprised Kiraku Shunsui. If Senkaname is still in front of them, if he speaks like this. As if seeing Kiraku Shunsui's scruples, Muyang chuckled and explained, "Don't worry, we are now in a different space from him. No, to be precise, we are now in the interlayer of the space. No matter what, he will not perceive us. Even if we talk here, he will not perceive it at all." Hearing Muyang's explanation, Kiraku Shunsui was slightly relieved and looked at Muyang with complex eyes. Such a strange ability, if it is an enemy, how to deal with it. Muyang saw the look in Kiraku Shunsui's eyes, and he said with a smile, "This ability has little effect in combat. As long as there is a violent energy impact, this temporary space interlayer will collapse." Hearing Muyang's words, Kiraku Shunsui is a little relieved. Who knows what will happen in the future, Kiraku Shunsui has to keep a few more eyes. If what you said to me before about Aizen's ability is right, Senkaname is on his side from the beginning. I have already told you this. Compared with what others said, it is more reassuring to me to see and think about it. Then what do you say now? I just want to say that what you said is not much different from what I thought. Kurosaki Shunsui looked at Muyang and said with a smile, well, can you tell me your next plan? This is so powerful. Yamada Hanataro looked at the scene in front of him in surprise, that is the Vice Captain Rinji. Mr. Kurosaki actually defeated him so easily. Shiba Ganju also stared straight at the eyes. That was not the ordinary Shinigami. That was the Vice Captain. The group of people who were at the top of the entire Soul Society was defeated by Kurosaki Ichigo. Although Kurosaki Ichigo was not unscathed, it was much better than Abarai Rinji. He only suffered a small injury at the beginning, and then almost won the battle in a crushing way. Kurosaki Ichigo glanced at Abarai Rinji who fell in front of him. After more than 10 days of Muyang's beta teaching, Kurosaki Ichigo's strength was much stronger than the same period in the original work. Even if Abarai Rinji could exert 5 times the strength in the modern world, it was still not enough in front of Kurosaki Ichigo who advanced by leaps and bounds. However, although he defeated Abarai Rinji at the moment, Kurosaki Ichigo did not have much excitement in his heart, but there was a faint sadness. Not long ago, when he fought with Muyang, Kurosaki Ichigo found that he could feel his heart from the sword of his opponent. As time passed, the strength increased, and the feeling became clearer and clearer. But when that feeling was getting stronger and stronger, Kurosaki Ichigo could not feel any feelings from Muyang's knife. At that time, he thought that those feelings before were illusions. In the process of fighting with Rinji before, Kurosaki Ichigo felt very strong feelings from his Zanpakuto. Anger, unwillingness, pain, all kinds of strong emotions were conveyed to Kurosaki Ichigo through Zanpakuto of both sides, and the previous fight was like the exchange between Kurosaki Ichigo and Rinji. In the previous fight, he felt the pain and persistence in the heart of this Shinigami in front of him. Let's go, Ganju, Hanataro. With complicated eyes, he glanced at Abarai Rinji who fell to the ground. He put his Zanpakuto on his back and greeted Shiba Ganju and Yamada Hanataro behind him and walked forward. The people who were in the way had been defeated by him. The next step they had to do was to go all the way forward and save Rukia. Oh! Shiba Ganju and Yamada Hanataro responded and walked forward behind Kurosaki Ichigo. However, the performance of the two people was obviously a little more restrained than before. In front of him is the man who could easily defeat the vice captain in a frontal confrontation. He didn't notice the change in the mood of Shiba Ganju and Yamada Hanataro behind him. Kurosaki Ichigo walked quickly in front. There was such a big fluctuation here just now. It was hard to guarantee that no one would feel it. Although Kurosaki Ichigo said that he wanted to defeat all the people in front of him, if he was really stopped by captain-level people, it was still very unfavorable for the plan to save Rukia. After all, his main purpose of coming to Soul Society was to save Rukia, not to fight with Shinigami. However, Kurosaki Ichigo walked while thinking hard in his heart. He could still feel his emotions from Zanpakuto of Rinji in the previous battle. Why did he not feel any emotions when he fought with Muyang before? What was special about Muyang? Boom! Just as Kurosaki Ichigo and the others finished walking those steps, a powerful and terrible Ryuryoku suddenly pressed down from above. The majestic and heavy Ryuryoku pressed down on Kurosaki Ichigo and the other two. Although he was not pressed down, Kurosaki Ichigo's feet still staggered. After standing firm, Kurosaki Ichigo looked up. Hey! Not bad, you can remain calm under my Ryuryoku. I haven't met such an interesting person for a long time. No wonder you can defeat those small fries. By the way, you seem to have just defeated Rinji. Very good. Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes showed a hint of uncontrollable shock. He looked at the person standing at the top of the tall building. A scar extended from his forehead to his chin from his eyes, making him look very ferocious. Not only that, but there was also a blindfold on his other eye, which made him look more dangerous. In comparison, the hair that stood up like a hedgehog seemed insignificant. Jumping down from the air and landing in front of Kurosaki Ichigo, the person looked at Kurosaki Ichigo with a grin. The horrifying smile made Kurosaki Ichigo feel a sense of crisis in his heart. I am 11th Division Captain, Zaraki Kenpachi. Zaraki Kenpachi looked at Kurosaki Ichigo in front of him and said. Although he didn't know how this guy's strength was, it should not be too bad to defeat Ikaku and Abarai people. Such an opponent must be able to make himself happy. Hey, the two little bugs over there, I don't have time to pay attention to you. If you don't want to die, roll to the side for me. Hearing Zaraki Kenpachi words, Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly turned his head, only to find that the two people who were originally standing behind him had already trembled with fear. Ganju was fine, but he was scared to cold sweat and trembled. As for Hanataro, under the Ryuryoku released by Zaraki Kenpachi, he had already fainted, and now his body was just twitching unconsciously. Ganju, hurry up and leave with Hanataro. Leave this to me. Kurosaki Ichigo looked at Shiba Ganju and shouted. But you. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's words, Shiba Ganju was stunned. The guy in front of him was the captain. If he also left, leaving only one person, facing such a powerful opponent, protecting him. Go. Seeing that Shiba Ganju was still hesitating, Kurosaki Ichigo shouted at him and wanted to drive him away. There is no use for you to stay here, you will only drag me down. Don't forget what our goal is to come here. I will stall him here. You should hurry up and save Rukia with Hanataro. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's cry, Shiba Ganju gritted his teeth and a trace of determination flashed across his face. Then he picked up Hanataro who was lying on the ground and carried him on his shoulder. He said to Kurosaki Ichigo in a deep voice, you must not die. Yes, don't worry. I will be fine. Wait for me to defeat this person and then I will go find you. Finally, he took a deep look at Kurosaki Ichigo. Shiba Ganju turned and ran. He knew that he was weak. If he stayed here, he could only cause trouble for Kurosaki Ichigo. It was better to leave quickly and let Ichigo fight with all his strength without any worries. The little bug has finally left. Now, let's have a happy fight. Seeing Shiba Ganju leave, Zaraki Kenpachi did not have the slightest intention of chasing. Instead, he looked at Kurosaki Ichigo, and his face showed a hint of eager expression. As long as he could fight with a strong enemy, it was good. As for those weak insects, who cared about them? You are Zaraki Kenpachi. Seeing Shiba Ganju finally left with Yamada Hanataro, Kurosaki Ichigo was relieved, and then turned to look at the person in front of him. The height of 2 meters was too stressful for him, and the extraordinary Ryuryoku also made him feel depressed. Oh. Have you heard of me? Did my henchman told you about me? Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's words, Zaraki Kenpachi was a little surprised at first, and then his face showed a clear expression. He already knew what happened between them from Ikaku, and there was nothing strange about Kurosaki Ichigo knowing his name. No, I have heard your name before that. When I was still in the modern world. Kurosaki Ichigo held his own Zanpakuto with both hands, looking alert. The modern world. Zaraki Kenpachi's eyes showed a trace of confusion. When did his name come to the present world? Ha Ken-chan, your name has been passed to the present world, it's really amazing. Suddenly a lovely voice came from behind Zaraki Kenpachi, and then Kurosaki Ichigo saw a cute little loli with pink short hair coming out from Zaraki Kenpachi's back, sitting on his shoulder and laughing. As she spoke, she slapped Zaraki Kenpachi on the face with her hand. What? This child. Seeing this little girl who suddenly appeared on Zaraki Kenpachi's shoulder, Kurosaki Ichigo's pupils suddenly contracted. Just now, he did not even see how this child appeared clearly. Who was she? Don't make a fuss, Yachiru. For Yachiru who slapped on his face, Zaraki Kenpachi just said a sentence without pain or itch, and then did not ask again, but turned to Kurosaki Ichigo with interest and asked, whose mouth did you hear my name from? Although fighting with the strong is very attractive, but in any case, this guy in front of him can't run away. Zaraki Kenpachi is interested in what he said in his mouth. It is better to ask now, lest this guy is killed later, and no one can answer him. Kimura Muyang. Kurosaki Ichigo keenly felt that when he heard the name Kimura Muyang, Zaraki Kenpachi and the little girl named Yachiru all had a burst of emotional fluctuation. Ken-chan, it's Yang Yang. I know. Hearing the two people in front of him asking and answering, Kurosaki Ichigo immediately breathed a sigh of relief. From their tone, they should be familiar with Muyang, so there should be no problem. Hey, little brat, what is your relationship with Kimura? He taught me for a while. That's good. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's answer, Zaraki Kenpachi corner of the mouth grinned, showing a ferocious smile. Seeing the smile of Zaraki Kenpachi corner of the mouth, Kurosaki Ichigo was shocked, and before he could react, he saw the guy in front of him suddenly pull out Zanpakuto and cut down on his head. Hey! What are you doing? After being stunned by Zaraki Kenpachi's sudden attack, Kurosaki Ichigo hurriedly stepped back a few steps, and then looked at Zaraki Kenpachi with a face of anger. He spoke well, how did he suddenly start? What? Of course, it's a fight. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's question, Zaraki Kenpachi had a manic smile on his face. He raised Zanpakuto in his hand and slashed at Kurosaki Ichigo again. Wait! The footstep slipped and avoided Zaraki Kenpachi attack again. Kurosaki Ichigo looked at Zaraki Kenpachi slightly and said, aren't you friends with Muyang? There is no need to fight with me. We have no reason to fight. Even if we are not companions, at least not enemies. Reason? Zaraki Kenpachi grinned, and his smile was full of bloodthirsty, do you need a reason to fight? As soon as the voice fell, Zaraki Kenpachi rushed toward Kurosaki Ichigo again like a beast, and the bloodthirsty momentum emitted from his body made Kurosaki Ichigo shudder. Why was there such a person, who was so crazy about fighting? However, escaping again and again was not his style. With his Zanpakuto in his hand, Kurosaki Ichigo held the sword with both hands, and greeted Zaraki Kenpachi without fear. Boom! The two swords intersected, and a strong momentum burst from the place where the two people's Zanpakuto collided, and the wall that was originally on their side instantly turned into dust in the storm of the exchange. Damn, so strong. Blocking Zaraki Kenpachi's blow head-on, Kurosaki Ichigo retreated a few steps and whispered, he was still a little careless. The previous blow had made his wrist a little injured. After all, the feeling from Zanpakuto was really not to be underestimated. This is so enjoyable. It has been a long time since someone can block my attack. Zaraki Kenpachi stuck out his tongue and licked his dry lips because of excitement. The excitement on his face was even more. Since Muyang left Soul Society, he had not fought so happily for a long time. Although Soul Society had several captains, there were not many people willing to accompany him to fight. Seeing the smile on Zaraki Kenpachi's face, Kurosaki Ichigo did not know why he suddenly felt a little panic in his heart. It was the first time he met such a crazy guy. Sure enough, it is worthy of the guy that Kimura likes. It is not ordinary. Looking at Kurosaki Ichigo, Zaraki Kenpachi could not help but praise again. God knows how long he has not had such a happy battle. Although the battle was just the beginning, Zaraki Kenpachi had a hunch that this would be a good battle. Wait, I am Muyang's friend. I think we should be companions. Seeing Zaraki Kenpachi's crazy face, Kurosaki Ichigo did not give up and said, until now he still had the mentality to settle with Zaraki Kenpachi peacefully. After all, it was not his intention to face such a powerful guy. Because you are Muyang's friend, so I want to fight with you more. Zaraki Kenpachi let out a roar, then raised his hand and raised Zanpakuto in his hand to Kurosaki Ichigo and cut down. The power of his blade was stronger than before. Damn it! Seeing Zaraki Kenpachi attacking again, Kurosaki Ichigo bit his teeth. Zanpakuto, who held his hands, also greeted Zaraki Kenpachi Zanpakuto. Compared with Zaraki Kenpachi with one hand holding the knife, Kurosaki Ichigo, who held the knife with both hands, was obviously more advantageous. Bang! Another fierce collision. Looking at Zaraki Kenpachi in front of him who was getting more and more excited, Kurosaki Ichigo couldn't help scolding Muyang in his heart before coming to Soul Society. Muyang had told him that if he met 11th Division Captain Zaraki Kenpachi, just say his name. I thought his name would be useful. Who would have thought that his name would have no effect at all? If he had to say it, perhaps this guy in front of him was even crazier. Ha, Kenchan looks so happy. I haven't seen Kenchan so happy in a long time. On a tall building not far away, little lowly Yachiru was lying on the side. She held her head with both hands and her two calves were still swaying behind her. Looking at the intense battle below, Yachiru felt very happy. She didn't know how long it had been since she had seen Kenchan so happy. It was as if she had never seen Kenchan again since Muyang left Soul Society 100 years ago. Asterisk whoosh asterisk. Just as the fierce battle was going on below, a black cat suddenly appeared on the top of a building. No one noticed when it appeared and how it appeared, as if it had always been there. Have you already fought against Zaraki Kenpachi? Standing on the top of the building, Yoruchi looked at Kurosaki Ichigo who was fighting hard below, and her eyes showed a strange emotion. Now she did not know whether it was good or bad to fight Zaraki Kenpachi. It was a battle maniac, and she did not know if there would be any danger. If it really did not work, she could not say that she was going to make a move. Not to mention anything else, but if she just saved Ichigo, Yoruchi was still a little confident. And just when Kurosaki Ichigo and Zaraki Kenpachi were fighting. First Division, Captain's Office. The invasion caused so many movements in Siriidii, and you are not staying in your post now. Is there something important to find me, Kiraku? Standing on the balcony, bathed in the sun, Yamamoto Genryusai eyes closed and asked without looking back. Although he did not go out of the room, the battles in Siriidii all could not escape the perception of Yamamoto Genryusai, but it was just a disaster at the end of the day. This small thing is handed over to the people below to complete, and he just needs to look. In comparison, Yamamoto Genryusai is more interested in the sudden visit of his proud student, Kiraku Shunsui. For this student of his, Yamamoto Genryusai has a full understanding. Although he usually looks indecent, he is more sensitive than everyone. For his wisdom, Yamamoto Genryusai has sufficient confidence, and he is now looking for himself at this juncture. Yamamoto Genryusai believes that he must have something important to explain to him. Sure enough, Kiraku Shunsui's next sentence confirmed Yamamoto Genryusai's conjecture. Yes, although I don't want to admit it, we are really in big trouble, old man. Kiraku Shunsui rarely did not joke, and at the beginning, he said with a serious attitude. Oh. Hearing Kiraku Shunsui words, Yamamoto Genryusai has a little interest. Can let Kiraku Shunsui say the two words big trouble, it seems that the thing in his mouth is really not simple. Turning around, his hand is still holding his cane, Yamamoto Genryusai still closed his eyes. If not for the momentum emitted by the body, it looks like there is no difference from an ordinary old man. It's about what happened 100 years ago. As soon as Kiraku Shunsui's voice fell, Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes, which had been closed, suddenly opened. At the same time, a powerful and intimidating momentum suddenly broke out from his body. I remember that I once said not to mention that thing again. Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes showed a glimmer of light, looking at Kiraku Shunsui and said. As usual, his tone made people unable to hear the real thoughts in his heart, but Kiraku Shunsui, who was very familiar with him, still heard a trace of emotion fluctuation from his voice. Obviously, Yamamoto Genryusai was not as indifferent as he showed. What happened that year left him a very deep impression. I got some new news, which is related to the thing from 100 years ago. The thing back then was not as we know. The truth of the matter is clear to me. Don't say it again, and it has been 100 years. There is no need to say anything now. Yamamoto Genryusai interrupted Kyoraku Shunsui's words and did not have the slightest interest in listening to it. The thing back then was the pain in his heart. He thought that Muyang would be someone who could inherit his will. He did not expect to step on such a road in the end. It was really tiring for the old man. I think it is better for you to listen to it, old man Yama. Seeing the expression of Yamamoto Genryusai, Kyoraku Shunsui, who was extremely familiar with him, naturally knew what he was thinking now. Looking straight into the eyes of Yamamoto Genryusai, Kyoraku Shunsui said in a deep voice. Seeing that Yamamoto Genryusai did not continue to object, Kyoraku Shunsui began to say what he heard from Muyang and his own cognition one by one. After listening to Kyoraku Shunsui's words, Yamamoto Genryusai did not respond, but closed his eyes. After a long time, Yamamoto Genryusai suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Kyoraku Shunsui. It has been 100 years. Why did you suddenly come to me today to explain? Kyoraku Shunsui was slightly stunned, but he was a smart person. Just in the blink of an eye, he had already thought of an excuse. Just as he was about to open his mouth to explain, Kyoraku Shunsui heard Yamamoto Genryusai on the opposite side had already opened his mouth. Presumably, you are also here, Muyang. Kyoraku Shunsui was stunned, then could not help but shake his head with a wry smile. Sure enough, it was worthy of being called Captain Commander. Even if he was old, he was still so sharp. Just because of his momentary daze, he thought everything clearly. It is really worthy of your position, really sharp and vigorous. Muyang stepped out of the void and looked at Yamamoto Genryusai. Even if he was old, he was still the captain commander of Godai 13. In some things, he had amazing acuity. You actually dare to appear in my captain's office so openly. Are you not afraid that I will kill you? Or do you have the confidence to save your life in my hands? Yamamoto Genryusai squinted at Muyang, and the cane that was originally held in his hand had shed the cover and became Zanpakuto held in the hand of Yamamoto Genryusai. Well, I said, Commander, don't be so excited. Relax, you should know that I am not hostile. Looking at the reaction of Yamamoto Genryusai, Muyang waved his hand and said, his tone full of confidence. I will give you a chance to speak first. Yamamoto Genryusai stared at Muyang for a long time, then said faintly. Well, I think you should know my purpose of coming. As Kyoraku said, the truth about the thing that happened 100 years ago. Muyang looked at Yamamoto Genryusai and then began his explanation about the things that he did not say 100 years ago because of various reasons. These are just your one-sided words. Do you have any evidence to prove these things you said? After listening to Muyang's words, Yamamoto Genryusai's face did not change, but looked at Muyang with his deep eyes. His eyes were calm, and people could not see what he was thinking. You'd better give this old man some evidence enough to prove your accuracy, otherwise. Yamamoto Genryusai's left thumb with a knife pushed up, and the Zanpakuto in his hand slightly unsheathed. Although Yamamoto Genryusai's expression and eyes did not change at all, his threat was obvious. Seeing Muyang's performance, Yamamoto Genryusai's expression did not change at all, but he still looked at Muyang calmly. As the captain commander of Soul Society Godai 13, he could not easily believe it because of a few words of others. Even if the person who spoke was Kyoraku Shunsui and Muyang. Wait, old man Yama. Just as Muyang and Yamamoto Genryusai were in a deadlock, Kyoraku Shunsui, who stood on the side, suddenly raised his hand and interrupted the conversation between the two of them, looking at Yamamoto Genryusai. Shut up, Kyoraku. You haven't bothered with the matter of you bringing people to me without permission. If there is anything, just wait. But this matter is really important. I think it is better to tell you early. Yamamoto Genryusai turned to look at Kyoraku Shunsui. According to him, what he wanted to say seemed to be more important than what he said to Muyang now. Seeing Yamamoto Genryosai looking at himself, Kyoraku Shunsui spread his hands and said to him, "The people in the Central 46 were killed." Just as the voice of Kyoraku Shunsui fell, Yamamoto Genryosai's eyes suddenly stared, and his majestic Ryuryoku flashed away. Seeing Yamamoto Genryosai restrain his emotions, Kyoraku Shunsui then said, "Judging from the clues at the scene, it has been at least 10 days. I think old man Yama should know more than me what this means." Yamamoto Genryosai was silent. He naturally knew what these things Kyoraku Shunsui said meant. Since 10 days ago, all the people in Central 46 were killed, then all the orders issued by Central 46 were naturally false. Is there anything else? After a moment of silence, Yamamoto Genryosai suddenly opened his mouth and asked Kyoraku Shunsui. "We saw Tsen Kaname captain at the scene, and he was a participant of those things." Yamamoto Genryosai closed his eyes and did not know what he was thinking. The three people had their own worries. In an instant, the atmosphere in the room became heavy. Dong! Suddenly, Yamamoto Genryosai hit the ground with his cane and woke up Muyang and Kyoraku Shunsui from their respective meditation. Awakened by Yamamoto Genryosai. Seeing the cane in his hand, Muyang was relieved. As long as Yamamoto put his Zanpakuto away, it seemed that he had a preliminary belief in his words. "I will believe you for the time being. Do you have anything else to say to me?" Yamamoto Genryosai looked at Muyang and said in a deep voice. "Of course." Muyang looked at Yamamoto Genryosai and said with a smile. Finally, he trusts us, and what he had to do next was to unite Kyoraku and Yamamoto to prepare a surprise for Aizen. Huchi. Kurosaki Ichigo leaned against the wall, holding Zanpakuto on the ground, supporting his tired body. There were big and small wounds all over his body, indicating the intensity of the previous battle. Compared to Kurosaki Ichigo's mess, Zaraki Kenpachi on the opposite side was much better. Although there were also big and small wounds on his body, Zaraki Kenpachi looked just a little tired at this time. As for the rest, as long as you see Zaraki Kenpachi's scary eyes and the crazy smile on his face, you will know. It's too good. You are really strong, but only such a strong person can make me feel the pleasure of fighting. Zaraki Kenpachi carried his Zanpakuto on his shoulder, stretched out his tongue and licked the blood left on his cheek. The smile on the corner of his mouth was more brilliant. Such a battle was what he was pursuing. Kurosaki Ichigo stared at Zaraki Kenpachi in front of him, and his eyes could not help but be a little frustrated. In the face of this guy in front of him, although he was not as powerless as when he fought Muyang, it was also enough to make him, a rookie who had not experienced many battles, feel desperate. When he fought with Muyang, Kurosaki Ichigo was completely unable to touch his level and had always been in the position of being abused. But this guy in front of him, although he was not as strong as Muyang to make himself feel desperate, his fearlessness and his passion for fighting made Kurosaki Ichigo feel his heart tremble. What kind of person could be like this, willing to do anything for the sake of fighting? Was he not afraid of this emotion at all? Again. Stepping forward, Zanpakuto in Zaraki Kenpachi's hand aimed at Kurosaki Ichigo's head mercilessly. Zanpakuto had not yet fallen, and the sword pressure caused by the slash had smashed the wall behind Kurosaki Ichigo. A sideways roll avoided Zaraki Kenpachi's slash, but Kurosaki Ichigo was still attacked by those gravel. Although he had been fighting Zaraki Kenpachi for a long time, Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but exclaim in his heart, "What kind of destructive power is this? Hey, Kurosaki Ichigo, can you not run around like this? Come and fight like a man." Seeing Kurosaki Ichigo avoid fighting again, Zaraki Kenpachi could not help but say, what he wanted was an intense battle, not a chasing game. "If I really fight with you, then I am a fool." Hearing Zaraki Kenpachi's words, Kurosaki Ichigo complained in his heart. Fortunately, Hanataro and Ganju left first. If they stayed here, just the aftermath of the battle would make them seriously injured. While fighting Zaraki Kenpachi, Kurosaki Ichigo was thinking about other people in his heart. And once again, he blocked Zaraki Kenpachi slash. Kurosaki Ichigo was secretly worried. Is this strength of Captain? Even he could not resist it. Among the few people who came over, he was the strongest. Others did not have such a strong strength. If they met Captain level. The faces of Ishida Yuri, Orihime, and Chad Yasutora flashed in his mind. Thinking of the possible situation after they met Captain-level people, Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but panic. They came to Soul Society because of him. If something unexpected happened because of this. Bang! Just as Kurosaki Ichigo was thinking in his mind, Zaraki Kenpachi kicked his stomach and kicked him out, hitting the wall in the distance. Bah! Crawling out of the gravel, Kurosaki Ichigo spat, and then looked at Zaraki Kenpachi. He was really careless. He was actually absent-minded in the battle with him. You are still absent-minded in the battle with me. Boy, you pissed me off. Zaraki Kenpachi slowly came over, and the momentum of his body gradually became stronger. He showed mercy again and again. He was tired. If this boy could not bring him more pleasure, then go to hell. The battle should be over. Kurosaki Ichigo stood up and looked at Zaraki Kenpachi who came over. He had to solve the battle quickly, then save Rukia and leave Soul Society with his companions. Hey! Zaraki Kenpachi's smile was even more brilliant. He felt that the blood all over his body was burning excitedly. What he wanted was this strong fighting spirit. Don't you want to release your Zanpakuto? I have to be serious. Holding Zanpakuto with both hands, Kurosaki Ichigo looked at Zaraki Kenpachi in front of him. Oh. You really dare to talk big. Do you mean that you have not taken out your real ability before? Zaraki Kenpachi had a playful smile on his face, waved his own Zanpakuto, and Zaraki Kenpachi looked at Kurosaki Ichigo. My Zanpakuto has no name, my Zanpakuto is like this, it has not been sealed, this is the original appearance of my Zanpakuto. Then your Zanpakuto will not become stronger, it is really a pity. Kurosaki Ichigo reached out and touched a little blood on his body, wiping it on his wrist, and then Zaraki Kenpachi saw a golden chain appeared on Kurosaki Ichigo's wrist, which emitted a depressing fluctuation. This is... Zaraki Kenpachi raised his eyebrows. Although he had no research on Kido, Zaraki Kenpachi could still judge that it was a binding Kido, and the Ryuryoku on it gave him a familiar feeling. Release! Kurosaki Ichigo shouted, and as the chain in his hand was unlocked, a burst of Ryuryoku, who was several times stronger than before, suddenly broke out. Removing the shackles. This feeling is really great. Kurosaki Ichigo clenched his fist and felt the powerful strength in his body. He said with satisfaction. When he was pulled over to train by Muyang that day, Muyang had set up such a thing on his body. Although he felt very uncomfortable at the beginning, whether it was Ryuryoku or his strength, they were all bound. However, after a while, Kurosaki Ichigo was used to it. Now that the shackles were removed, he finally showed his true strength. Ha ha ha. This is really interesting. Feeling the strong Ryuryoku emitted from Kurosaki Ichigo, Zaraki Kenpachi laughed loudly. This was what he expected: a strong opponent, a fierce battle. You can only laugh for this little time. Slightly familiar with his explosive strength, Kurosaki Ichigo grabbed Zanpakuto, who was inserted on the ground, raised his hand, and Zanpakuto pointed the tip of his blade at Zaraki Kenpachi, his tone full of confidence. I didn't expect that I would be strong to this extent after removing the shackles. My whole body is full of Ryuryoku, who is almost overflowing, and even the wounds on my body are slowly recovering under the effect of Ryuryoku. Now Kurosaki Ichigo's heart is full of confidence, such a strong self, once again facing this guy in front of me, must win. Then try it. With a roar, Zaraki Kenpachi stepped on the ground, and Zanpakuto in his hand suddenly stabbed at Kurosaki Ichigo. Dang! In the face of Zaraki Kenpachi's blow, Kurosaki Ichigo did not avoid again, but calmly picked up his Zanpakuto, lifting the heavy as if it was light in front of him, and Zanpakuto's blade just blocked Zaraki Kenpachi's tip. Seeing Kurosaki Ichigo's action, Zaraki Kenpachi's eyes lit up and shouted, "Wonderful!" After a cry, Zaraki Kenpachi put strength on his hand and twisted his own Zanpakuto to cut Kurosaki Ichigo's head. Dang! Kurosaki Ichigo raised his hand, and his huge Zanpakuto unexpectedly blocked Zaraki Kenpachi again as if nothing. I said, the battle is over. Kurosaki Ichigo's hand waved, with a speed that Zaraki Kenpachi almost could not catch. Puff! A knife cut down, and a spray of blood sprayed out from Zaraki Kenpachi's chest and splashed on Kurosaki Ichigo's face. Air. Being cut down by Kurosaki Ichigo as a chest, Zaraki Kenpachi was stunned for a moment, and he could not remember how long it had been. He was seriously injured like this, and it seemed that the memory was still decades ago, maybe longer. However. Ha 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 ha. It's this feeling. Zaraki Kenpachi opened his mouth and laughed wildly, and the expression on his face looked more crazy. Wasn't this kind of battle what he had been pursuing for so many years? Ha! Regardless of the wound on his chest, Zaraki Kenpachi waved his hand, and the saw-like Zanpakuto in his hand slashed down at Kurosaki Ichigo. Although he was shocked by the crazy momentum of Zaraki Kenpachi, Kurosaki Ichigo, who had been released at this time, was like a god. Although he was slightly distracted, he waved Zanpakuto directly to block Zaraki Kenpachi's crazy attack. Not only that, after blocking Zaraki Kenpachi's attack, he also gave him a shoulder. You don't have to fight anymore, you have lost. Looking at Zaraki Kenpachi in front of him who was almost dyed with blood, Kurosaki Ichigo said, "How to say this guy is also Muyang's friend, although he has not held back from the beginning." He ha. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's words, Zaraki Kenpachi raised his head and laughed, and the smile on his face was more crazy. You are really too naive. Are you kidding? The battle has just begun. Dang 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 dang. Kurosaki Ichigo blocked Zaraki Kenpachi's attack time and time again. At the same time, he left big and small wounds on his body. As they fought again and again, a large amount of blood spurted out from his wound and scattered on the ground. However, although he was attacked again and again, the blood kept flowing, but the smile on Zaraki Kenpachi's face was getting stronger and stronger. Damn it! Why am I met with such a guy? Once again blocking Zaraki Kenpachi's attack, Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but say, at this time, his body was full of blood, and he had his own, but more of it was dyed with Zaraki Kenpachi's blood in the previous battle. It's too good. Such a high feeling. Zaraki Kenpachi was blocked by Kurosaki Ichigo again, but his arm turned, Zanpakuto turned in the air, and a knife stabbed Kurosaki Ichigo's shoulder, leaving a wound on his shoulder, which was the first time he hit Kurosaki Ichigo after Kurosaki Ichigo broke out. Being stabbed in the shoulder, Kurosaki Ichigo was almost reflexively stabbed Zaraki Kenpachi in the head. Pa! Just as Kurosaki Ichigo's Zanpakuto was about to stab Zaraki Kenpachi in the head, under the combat intuition of many years, Zaraki Kenpachi moved his head on one side, and Kurosaki Ichigo's Zanpakuto wiped his eyes and cut off the blindfold in his right eye. This is... Kurosaki Ichigo looked at Zaraki Kenpachi in surprise. Why did he put an eye patch on the intact eye? TSK, I wanted to enjoy it for a while. Zaraki Kenpachi glanced at the eye patch that was opened. At this moment, a golden Ryuryoku broke out from Zaraki Kenpachi without warning. The rich Ryuryoku was like a substance, forcing Kurosaki Ichigo, who was originally standing in front of Zaraki Kenpachi, to retreat a few steps. What? How is it possible? Looking at the solid golden Ryuryoku around Zaraki Kenpachi's body, the shock in Kurosaki Ichigo's heart was simply beyond the limit. The battle had reached such a degree, and this guy still retained such a powerful strength. Grabbing the falling eye patch, Zaraki Kenpachi looked at the puzzled Kurosaki Ichigo in front of him and explained, "This thing is created by the guy from the Technology Development Bureau, a monster that can constantly absorb spiritual energy. Removed it and it will release all the Ryuryoku it has absorbed so far, and it is the Ryuryoku you feel now. All the time, in order to enjoy the battle, I will wear this eye patch to limit my strength. However, if the opponent is at your level, even if you go all out, it should be acceptable." Zanpakuto in his hand waved, and a building around Zaraki Kenpachi collapsed instantly. Seeing this scene, Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes jumped. Just from the casual swing of Zaraki Kenpachi just now, Kurosaki Ichigo knew clearly that the strength of the other side had grown a lot. In going, Kurosaki Ichigo. The physical Ryuryoku turned into a skull behind Zaraki Kenpachi, making his whole person look more fierce. Then let's decide the outcome in one move. Kurosaki Ichigo held the knife with both hands, and his eyes were full of determination. For him, this was a battle that must be won. Even if he gambled his life, he absolutely could not fall here. Rukia was still waiting for him to save her. The two people gathered all their Ryuryoku on Zanpakuto in their hands, which would be a blow that they exhausted all their strength. Boom! The moment the swords met, the whole world seemed to lose its voice, and then a terrible fluctuation spread around with the place where the two of them fought. With the place where the two of them were at the center, everything in a radius of nearly 100 meters was turned into ruins. The smoke and dust dispersed, revealing Zaraki Kenpachi and Kurosaki Ichigo in the center. Both of them Zanpakuto were inserted into each other. Puff! Kurosaki Ichigo sprayed a mouthful of blood, and Zaraki Kenpachi Zanpakuto stabbed his chest. He could feel that his internal organs were injured, and it was a little difficult to breathe at this time. Cough cough. Compared to Kurosaki Ichigo's injury, Zaraki Kenpachi was not much worse. He was stabbed in the abdomen by Kurosaki Ichigo. His feeling wound was much more serious than Kurosaki Ichigo. After all, Kurosaki Ichigo's Zanpakuto was different from his. The broad blade made his injury much more serious. Shit, no win. Taking a few steps back, Zaraki pulled out his Zanpakuto which stabbed into Kurosaki Ichigo, and at the same time Ichigo pulled out his Zanpakuto which stabbed Zaraki's abdomen. Zaraki Kenpachi said with dissatisfaction, and then fell to the ground. When Zaraki Kenpachi brutally pulled out his own Zanpakuto from Kurosaki Ichigo's chest, Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. After Zaraki Kenpachi fell, he also fell to the ground. He really did not expect that in his full strength state, he would be beaten so badly. Asterisk whoosh asterisk. Not long after Zaraki Kenpachi fell to the ground, the pink-haired little loli, Yachiru, appeared at the scene. "Thank you, Kurikan, Kenchan has not been so happy for a long time. You have to take good care of your injuries. Next time, you will fight with Kenchan." With a serious smile on his face, Yachiru said this, and helped Zaraki Kenpachi up. Her feet touched the ground a few times, and took Zaraki Kenpachi away from this place. Ichigo felt pain all over his body. He had no strength at all. The battle just now was so big. If he stayed here all the time, he would definitely be discovered by others. Right now, he had no strength to fight at all. Kurosaki Ichigo, who was lying on the ground, could not help but feel anxious. Lying down like this was really not a solution. If other people found out, it would be over. Moreover, he did not know how Hanataro and Ganju were doing. Shwa! A black cat suddenly appeared in front of Kurosaki Ichigo. "Miss Yoruchi. You are too reckless. But someone will be coming soon. I will take you away first, and then I will settle the score with you immediately." "Oh, but Miss Yoruchi, with your size, how can you take me away?" "Well, as long as I restore my original appearance, I can easily do it." Original appearance? The original appearance? Although he was heavily injured and lying on the ground, Kurosaki Ichigo was still attracted by what Yoruichi said. Of course. Otherwise, do you think cats can talk? Ah. Hearing Yoruichi words, Kurosaki Ichigo's face turned black. It was Yoruichi who told him that cats could also talk. Cats can't talk. This is common sense. Seeing the expression on Kurosaki Ichigo's face, Yoruichi added fuel to the fire. Hearing Yoruichi ridicule, Kurosaki Ichigo lowered his head with a defeated face. Speaking of which, you haven't seen my real face yet, have you? As she spoke, Yoruichi's body suddenly emitted a weak light. Then, in the eyes of Kurosaki Ichigo, the black cat who was standing in front of him suddenly turned into a sexy beauty with a protruding front and back, naked. Seeing the beautiful scenery in front of him, Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly felt a rush of blood, and the wound that was about to recover on his body was about to crack again. As for Yoruichi, she was not aware of her own situation. Seeing the sudden change in expression of Kurosaki Ichigo, she thought that her transformation surprised him. She immediately stretched her body in front of Kurosaki Ichigo with a proud face. Seeing the exposed sexy curves again, Kurosaki Ichigo felt a rush of blood and the wounds on his body became even more serious. What's wrong with you? Are you okay? Ichigo. Seeing that Kurosaki Ichigo's wound seemed to be about to crack, Yoruichi stepped forward to check it, but the result was that Kurosaki Ichigo's wound cracked more seriously. What's wrong? Why is your face so red? Yoruichi reached out her hand and touched Kurosaki Ichigo's head. Your head is still so hot. Could it be that you got fever from the injury? Yoruichi leaned forward and reached out to touch Kurosaki Ichigo's head. This way, the two towering mounds on her chest were almost touching Kurosaki Ichigo's face. This beautiful scene immediately made Kurosaki Ichigo's nose bleed. Not good, someone is coming. Just as Kurosaki Ichigo was about to open his mouth to remind Yoruichi. Yoruichi's expression suddenly changed, and then she picked up Kurosaki Ichigo, and with a tap of her feet, she turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed towards the secret base that she had left behind in the past. Not long after Yoruichi left, a gentle figure dressed in white feathers appeared in this place. This Ryuryoku. A gentle voice came out from the mouth of the person. Sensing the remnants of Ryuryoku on the scene, the corners of the person's mouth curled into a smile. Are they here too? I wonder how many more things will happen. What did you say? Captain Unohana? Nothing. Unohana Retsu turned her head and said to the tall subordinate behind her, find out where Captain Zaraki is. Yes. Yoruichi picked up Kurosaki Ichigo, held him in her arms with a princess carry that made Kurosaki Ichigo ashamed to death, and hurried towards the hill of Sokayaku. Being hugged by Yoruichi, Yoruichi's full chest was pressed against Kurosaki Ichigo's face. With that posture, Kurosaki Ichigo was ashamed to death, but he was seriously injured now. Without the slightest resistance, he could only helplessly fall into Yoruichi's arms. At the same time, he calmed himself down again and again in his heart, trying to ignore the chest that was attached to his face. He tried hard to suppress the nameless throbbing in his heart. As an adolescent boy, who knew how strong his perseverance was to do this. Just as he suppressed the throbbing in his heart, Kurosaki Ichigo was shocked by another thing. Because he was afraid to open his eyes and see the erotic scene in front of him, Kurosaki Ichigo had always closed his eyes, but at this time, when he heard the sound of the wind constantly blowing in his ears, the shock in Kurosaki Ichigo's heart was hard to hide. Even if he closed his eyes, he could still feel how amazing the speed of their advance at this time was, which was far faster than his speed. She can transform into a cat and is so clear about the matter of soul society, and the speed of the transformation now not only Miss Yoruichi, but also Kisuke and Kimura. They are all so strange. What secret is hidden behind them? The more Kurosaki Ichigo thought about it, the more puzzled he became. The matter of these people was simply a riddle that could not be solved. What was their purpose? We're here. Lie here first. I'll treat your wounds. Just as Kurosaki Ichigo was lost in his thoughts, Yoruchi suddenly stopped, put him on the ground and said. This is. Hearing Yoruchi words, Kurosaki Ichigo opened his eyes and looked around. Then he saw the naked body of Yoruchi again. Yoruchi, what's wrong with you? Yoruchi just found the gauze. When she turned her head, she saw that Kurosaki Ichigo's face was quickly dyed with a layer of red. She hurriedly stepped over, squatted down and asked with concern. You bastard, hurry up and put on clothes. Don't walk around like this again. As Yoruchi's body approached, the blush on Kurosaki Ichigo's face became more and more. Finally, he could not help but open his mouth and shout at Yoruchi. Ha! Yoruchi only reacted at this time, but her face did not show any shyness, but she openly teased Kurosaki Ichigo. Is this first time you see a woman's body? Ichigo. You are so long-winded. Hurry up and put on your clothes, bastard. After being teased by Yoruchi, Kurosaki Ichigo became even more depressed and shouted with dissatisfaction. Seeing Kurosaki Ichigo's shy appearance, Yoruchi felt interested in her heart. She had not encountered such a situation in a long time. This kind of feeling made her miss it a lot. It was just like teasing little Byakuya back then. It was a long-lost happiness. However, although she was thinking about what happened back then, Yoruchi still went to the side to find a set of clothes to put on, and then sat back next to Kurosaki Ichigo and bandaged the wound on his body. I really don't know how to talk about you. Didn't I tell you that as long as you meet a captain-level opponent, don't hesitate, turn around and run, you actually still fight with the captain, this time you are lucky that you didn't die. Hearing Yoruchi's words, Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but refute. Although it was dangerous when he fought Zaraki Kenpachi before, he did not lose in the end. If he fought with captain-level people, he might not necessarily lose, let alone turn around and run like Yoruchi said. I know you will not be convinced, but Zaraki Kenpachi you just fought is the most special one of all captain. Seeing that Kurosaki Ichigo was not convinced, Yoruchi solemnly said to him, I can say this to you. Even if your strength is several times stronger, the result after fighting with him is at most like this, there will be no winner. How is it possible? Hearing Yoruchi's words, Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but question. When he fought Zaraki Kenpachi before, Kurosaki Ichigo had a slight advantage. If the strength was several times stronger, how could the result of fighting with him be the same? Zaraki Kenpachi. It is the 11th Division captain, and the 11th Division is the combat division of Godai 13. Zaraki Kenpachi is a guy who values fighting as his life. For him, fighting is a pleasure. All his battles are for better enjoyment, just because your strength at the beginning is still weak, and you can fight with him to such a degree because he lowered his own strength to match yours. If you are very strong at the beginning, what you will face will be a more terrible Zaraki Kenpachi, who is a person fighting for the battle. Hearing Yoruchi solemnly talk, and at the same time thinking of the almost crazy face in the previous battle, Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly felt a chill, such a guy, if several times stronger. Not good. Ganju and Hanataro are still there. The faces of Shiba Ganju and Yamada Hanataro suddenly flashed in his mind. Kurosaki Ichigo opened his mouth and shouted. They went to save Rukia for him. Now he was here. What if they were in danger? Don't worry. Generally, captain and vice-captain will not go to the 4-deep prison. Even if you have just had an extremely fierce battle there will be no captain who will be idle and run over to check. At most, send vice-captain to check it out. Ganju will be fine. Well. Hearing Yoruchi's explanation, Kurosaki Ichigo just put down his heart and felt a familiar, powerful Ryoryoku appear in the distance. That direction is Ganju. Almost at the moment of feeling the Ryoryoku, Kurosaki Ichigo already knew the identity of the other party. Although his ability in Ryuryoku perception was very weak, Kuchiki Byakuya was the person who disabled his Shinigami ability not long ago. He could not forget the familiar Ryuryoku. Moreover, the direction of his Ryuryoku came was the place where Shiba Ganju was. Not good. I am going to save Ganju and others. Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly stood up and said with a firm expression. Wait. Ichigo, your current body. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's words, Yoruchi immediately opened her mouth to stop him, but she suddenly stopped halfway. Miss Yoruchi, Ganju came to Siriitii because of me. If anything happens to him, I will never forgive myself. As soon as he finished speaking, Kurosaki Ichigo turned around and walked out. Wait, Ichigo, catch. Reaching out to take the thing that Yoruchi threw to him, Kurosaki Ichigo looked down and saw that it was a strange-looking thing. This is a flying item. Hurry up and go over. Nodding at Yoruchi, Kurosaki Ichigo stretched out his hand and used the flying item to leave. What happened? Kimura. Seeing that Kurosaki Ichigo had left, Yoruchi turned around and asked Muyang, who had appeared out of nowhere. Muyang looked meaningfully at the direction where Kurosaki Ichigo left. He turned to Yoruchi and said, rather than words, let the reality tell him. Just listening to it, he can't really understand his own weakness. Muyang's face slowed down. He turned to Yoruchi and said, of course, we still need you to keep an eye on him, lest anything happens to him. I know. Why do I feel like I've been ordered around by you and Kisuke lately? How troublesome. Even though she said that it was troublesome, Yoruchi still rushed in the direction that Kurosaki Ichigo left without hesitation. If she went too late, it was inevitable that there would be no danger there. In her perception, there was another captain-level Ryuryoku who went there. Seeing Yoruchi leave, Muyang shrugged, and then like a broken mirror, Muyang's body suddenly turned into dust and disappeared in the air with a breeze. Are you from the Shiba family? Kuchiki Byakuya's face did not change, but there was a different look in his eyes, showing his inner turmoil. Since you are from the Shiba family, it is too rude to simply defeat you. Kuchiki Byakuya slowly pulled out his Zanpakuto. What does he want to do? So far away. Looking at the distance where Kuchiki Byakuya pulled out his Zanpakuto, Shiba Ganju was puzzled. Although he did not know what the other party was thinking, Shiba Ganju did not dare to relax at all. The guy in front of him was the head of Kuchiki family, the head of the four nobles. 6th Division Captain, facing such a powerful opponent that made him desperate, he did not dare to relax at all. He reached out and took out an explosive from behind him. Shiba Ganju decided to make the first move. The people of Shiba family did not have the habit of retreating without fighting. Scatter, Senbenzakura. Kuchiki Byakuya said coldly as his Zanpakuto started to transform into countless cherry blossom petals. In the sunlight, it reflected a beautiful color, but under the beautiful petals, there was a hidden killing intent. It was like a cool breeze blowing through his body. At the moment when the breeze blew, Shiba Ganju felt a pain coming from his whole body. In the next moment, with a large amount of blood spurting out from his whole body, Shiba Ganju had fallen to the ground powerlessly. Even looking at Shiba Ganju, who was lying on the ground unknown whether he was dead or alive, Kuchiki Byakuya's line of sight turned to Yamada Hanataro. For this kind of person who violated Shinigami's rules, as Shinigami's example, Kuchiki Byakuya will never let go. Please don't do it again, big brother. A step rushed over and stood in front of Hanataro. Kuchiki Rukia looked at Kuchiki Byakuya and pleaded loudly. Shiba Ganju and Yamada Hanataro came to save him. How could he let both of them die here? For Kuchiki Rukia's plea, Kuchiki Byakuya raised his arm, and the petals all over the sky seemed to sense his call and rushed to Kuchiki Rukia. Seeing Senbenzakura coming to his side, Kuchiki Rukia's pupils contracted slightly. Is this the end for her? Dying in the hands of her brother Byakuya? After a feeling of despair appeared in his heart, Kuchiki Rukia suddenly thought, perhaps this is also good. To die under the hands of brother Byakuya, it is her own fault, because she has stained the glory of Kuchiki family. Bang! Just as Kuchiki Rukia heart gradually calmed down and faced death calmly, a figure fell from the sky, carrying a huge momentum and suddenly fell to the ground. It made a violent sound, and at the same time blew away Senbon Sakura, which was attacking Kuchiki Rukia. What? In the sudden change, even with Kuchiki Byakuya's calm and collected nature, he could not help but let out a low cry. To be able to block his attack, he could only be a team leader level existence, and from the body of the person in front of him, it was the captain level Ryoryoku, but what shocked Kuchiki Byakuya the most was still the appearance of the person. This is Shiryukatake, who had just arrived at the scene, looked at the scene in front of him. There was a person lying on the ground who did not know whether he was dead or alive. Looking at that kind of injury, he knew that it must be Kuchiki Byakuya's doing, but what was the matter with the orange-haired teenager? That was the captain-level Ryoryoku, but there was no person like him in Soul Society before. This teenager is a disaster. If the disaster has this kind of strength, Captain Aizen is really likely to be killed by the disaster. And his appearance. Looking at Kurosaki Ichigo's face that resembled Shiba Kaien, Shiryukatake's eyes rippled. Byakuya, who is that person? Slightly turning his head, as if he knew what Shiryukatake was thinking, Kuchiki Byakuya said in a light tone, "It has nothing to do with you. At least for now, he is just someone I have seen before. Other than that, he is nothing. It is just an invader. I will get rid of him. In this way, the matter will be solved. This trivial dispute, everything will end." "Oh, you really dare to talk big. What do you mean that you will defeat me soon? You don't have to be too proud." Hearing Kuchiki Byakuya's casual words, Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but think of what happened that night. He reached out to hold his Zanpakuto's hilt and looked at Kuchiki Byakuya with a provocative face. "You are the one who is proud." His hands were naturally hanging down, and Kuchiki Byakuya looked at Kurosaki Ichigo indifferently. Ichigo might be strong. But in the end, he was just a human. Even his Ryoryoku, which was comparable to captain level, was not enough to make him look at him directly. "I'm gonna defeat you here. It doesn't matter how much Ryoryoku you have, you're just a human. A substitute Shinigami. TSK. Sure enough, it is the tone of the eldest young master. Captain is just like this. Don't be too arrogant." Humph. Kuchiki Byakuya snorted, and his eyes turned cold. As the voice fell, a strong Ryoryoku broke out from Kuchiki Byakuya's body. The moment he felt that Ryoryoku, Kuchiki Rukia and Yamada Hanataro directly fell to the ground. Kuchiki Rukia, who lost the strength of Shinigami, even felt that her breathing was a little difficult. Ichigo's Zanpakuto, which was calmly pulled out of his body, aimed at Kuchiki Byakuya. After fighting Zaraki Kenpachi, just Ryoryoku's oppression could not cause any effect on Kurosaki Ichigo. Under such a Ryoryoku, you can still keep a straight face. It seems that your strength has really improved a lot. However, this is not the capital for you to trample on our dignity. Although I don't know how you recovered Shinigami's strength, it is just another swing of the knife. Human, it is over. As soon as the voice fell, the figure of Kuchiki Byakuya suddenly disappeared from the place. Dang! With an indifferent face, he blocked the slash of Kuchiki Byakuya, and with a force of his arm, he threw Kuchiki Byakuya away. With a flick of his arm, he put Zanpakuto on his shoulder. Kurosaki Ichigo looked at the stunned Kuchiki Byakuya. "I can see all your movements. Don't play the tricks of children anymore, Kuchiki Byakuya. I said, I will defeat you and save Rukia. Do you feel so proud after blocking my attack?" Kuchiki Byakuya stood firmly, put away his surprise, looked at Kurosaki Ichigo and said, "Although I don't know why the strength of the kid has improved so much, and even can keep up with his speed, but it is only human after all. Kuchiki Byakuya does not think that he will lose to human beings. Don't you want to attack? Then it is my turn. Ignoring Kuchiki Byakuya's words, Kurosaki Ichigo turned and his body appeared in front of Kuchiki Byakuya. In his hand, his Zanpakuto slashed into Kuchiki Byakuya's waist. Seeing Kurosaki Ichigo's action, Kuchiki Byakuya's pupils suddenly contracted, and there was a strange look in his eyes. This is. The brain put back Kurosaki Ichigo's previous footsteps, and Kuchiki Byakuya's heart rippled. That kind of speed. That kind of speed. It was not only Kuchiki Byakuya who was surprised. Sure Yukatake, who was watching the battle, was also surprised. That familiar pace had not speed seen for more than 100 years. Why did it appear on this teenager? Dang dang dang. As Kurosaki Ichigo and Kuchiki Byakuya fought again and again, the strange look in Kuchiki Byakuya's eyes became more and more clear. In the previous fight, Kuchiki Byakuya did not even attack once. He just passively defended and observed Kurosaki Ichigo's movements. The idea in Kuchiki Byakuya's heart was gradually confirmed. It can't be wrong. Some of the teenager's attack habits and moves are definitely learned from Kimura. Learning from Kimura's slash and shunpa, what is the identity of this teenager? Sure Yukatake looked at Kurosaki Ichigo who kept attacking Kuchiki Byakuya, and could not help guessing the origin of Kurosaki Ichigo in his heart. What's wrong? Can you only defend? Kuchiki Byakuya. After another attack, Kurosaki Ichigo looked at Kuchiki Byakuya who had been defending and said. Although he had been attacking before, there was no victory at all. This way, he could not win for himself. You are too proud, little devil. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's words, Kuchiki Byakuya's eyes flashed a trace of anger. He did not know why, seeing the teenager in front of him and Muyang's similar attack method, Kuchiki Byakuya felt an unspeakable anger rising in his heart, as if something that belonged to him had been taken away. Scatter, Senbon Sakura. The countless sakura petals once again danced in the air. This is. Kurosaki Ichigo looked at the flower petals floating in the sky. Although it was beautiful, it contained a strict killing intent. Although he did not know what the flower petals that suddenly floated up in the air were, Kurosaki Ichigo still keenly felt a sense of crisis from them. A sense of alarm rose in his heart. Kurosaki Ichigo almost instinctively took a quick step and left. Several flower petals brushed past his hand. Standing still, a drop of blood dripped from Kurosaki Ichigo's arm. Those flower petals are blades. Looking at the flower petals dancing in the air, a trace of fear flashed through Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes. He did not expect that such a beautiful flower petal was actually made of blades. Looking at the dense flower petals in the air, who knew how many blades there were? To be able to dodge my attack, it is really worthy of praise. Seeing that Kurosaki Ichigo avoided his attack, Kuchiki Byakuya was not stingy to praise. Looking at the wound on his wrist, Kurosaki Ichigo started to feel the pressure of going against Kuchiki Byakuya. Although the wound was not deep, the terrible thing was that the wound was just on Kurosaki Ichigo's wrist, and it inevitably had some impact on his activities. Glancing at Kurosaki Ichigo's wound, Kuchiki Byakuya said faintly, "It's just that at this level, I don't think it is that severe." Inexplicably, Kuchiki Byakuya's heart was filled with an agitated mood, as if after seeing Kurosaki Ichigo's performance, his heart had been suppressing a anger. At this time, after hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's words, Kuchiki Byakuya could not suppress his mouth to spit. "You really dare to say it, bastard." Wiping his hand on his body, Kurosaki Ichigo cracked the corner of his mouth and said. "The attack range of those blades is very wide, and he can manipulate them remotely. In this case, let's fight in close proximity." The brain quickly made a plan, and with a turn of his feet, Kurosaki Ichigo appeared behind Kuchiki Byakuya. In his hand, Zanpakuto stabbed at Kuchiki Byakuya's back. Kurosaki Ichigo Zanpakuto had just stabbed out, and he saw a touch of pink appear in his vision. When Kurosaki Ichigo saw it, those blades were already close at hand, as if waiting for him. Only enough time to block with his hand in front of himself. The next moment, Kurosaki Ichigo had been sent flying by the blow. When Kurosaki Ichigo fell to the ground, Kuchiki Byakuya slowly turned around and looked at Kurosaki Ichigo, who fell to the ground in a proud manner. Getting up from the ground, Kurosaki Ichigo frowned. Although he just reached out to block his face still left a few blood marks, and the left hand in front of him had been cut by those tiny blades. Before he could stand firm, Kuchiki Byakuya waved the hilt in his hand again, and the petals in the air immediately rushed toward Kurosaki Ichigo's head in the direction of his arm. Seeing the blade rushing toward him again, Kurosaki Ichigo did not dare to take it lightly. He had been hit just now, and it was not light at all. Thinking in his heart, Kurosaki Ichigo's body had already responded. Just when those small blades were about to hit Kurosaki Ichigo again, Kurosaki Ichigo turned his feet and his body disappeared instantly. When he reappeared, he was already a few meters away. Seeing Kurosaki Ichigo once again use his familiar pace, Kuchiki Byakuya's anger is even more. In the past, I didn't know why he fled from Soul Society. He had been silent for 100 years, and now he actually handed his technique to a humble human. Especially this human is repeatedly provoking my dignity as Shinigami. Commanding Senbon Zakura to attack Kurosaki Ichigo in his hand, Kuchiki Byakuya recalled the things from 100 years ago in his mind. Since decades ago, his heart could no longer calm down, especially when he saw the various movements that Kurosaki Ichigo unconsciously exposed and Muyang were very similar. There was an unknown fire in Kuchiki Byakuya's heart. You are distracted. Kuchiki Byakuya. Hearing the voice coming from his ear, Kuchiki Byakuya pupil slightly contracted, careless. Slash. Byakuya's arm was slashed by Ichigo's Zanpakuto. Kuchiki Byakuya looked indifferently at Kurosaki Ichigo, who just hurt him, and did not care about the wound on his arm. How is that possible? Kuchiki Rukia, who was lying on the side, looked at Kuchiki Byakuya, who was injured by Kurosaki Ichigo, and her heart was set off a storm. For the strength of her brother, Kuchiki Byakuya, Rukia was extremely clear. That was Captain, the person standing at the top of the entire Soul Society, was actually injured by a mere substitute Shinigami. Kurosaki Ichigo, what on earth had he experienced? Looking at Kurosaki Ichigo's determined face, Kuchiki Rukia's heart rippled. She had not cared before, but now she saw that Kurosaki Ichigo's body was covered in bandages. She did not know what kind of battle he had experienced. Why did he save her at all costs? Well, is your reaction fast? Seeing the small wound on Kuchiki Byakuya's arm, Kurosaki Ichigo curled his lips and said, apparently dissatisfied with the result of his battle. You are already worthy of pride, human. Kuchiki Byakuya looked at Kurosaki Ichigo and said lightly. It was not his style to be distracted in battle, but... However, this is also the last time you can touch me. After saying this sentence, Kuchiki Byakuya suppressed all the emotions in his heart and returned to his usual calm. The situation of this human teenager is not good. Seeing the subtle change of expression on Kuchiki Byakuya's face, Shiryukatake, who stood on the side, whispered. Although Kurosaki Ichigo did not know about the emotional change of Kuchiki Byakuya like Shiryukatake, he still felt a sense of crisis. Just a warning sign rose in his heart, and before he could even make any response, Kurosaki Ichigo saw a figure suddenly appear in front of his eyes. With a wave of his arm, Ichigo parried Kuchiki Byakuya's attack from below, and then Kurosaki Ichigo waved his blade down, the two blades collided, and the two were in a stalemate. Hey, I said that I have seen through your attack, Kuchiki Byakuya. Looking at the iceberg-like face of Kuchiki Byakuya close at hand, Kurosaki Ichigo said with a smile. As long as he saw the face of this guy in front of him, Kurosaki Ichigo always could not help but want to open his mouth to ridicule him. That expressionless face, as if he had never seen him in his eyes, made Kurosaki Ichigo feel very uncomfortable. Naive. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's words, Kuchiki Byakuya gently opened his mouth and spat out the two words. Kurosaki Ichigo's face changed, and just as he was about to speak again, he saw the empty hand of Kuchiki Byakuya gently stretched out, and a finger pointed at his chest. Heido number 4 Byakurai. Kuchiki Byakuya whispered, and then a white light suddenly shot out from his finger, leaving a hole in Kurosaki Ichigo's chest. Cough cough. Kurosaki Ichigo, who was already seriously injured, spat out a mouthful of blood. Forcefully propping up his body, Kurosaki Ichigo moved his feet and left in a flash. Sizzle. As soon as the body stood still, Kurosaki Ichigo heard a sharp voice coming from his ear. Dang! Lifting his own Zanpakuto, blocking the attack from Kuchiki Byakuya, Kurosaki Ichigo had not yet breathed, and he felt that Kuchiki Byakuya's attack was like a storm coming from all directions. The so-called long-term defense is always lost. Kurosaki Ichigo, who was seriously injured because of the fight with Zaraki Kenpachi, was soon unable to resist the attack from Kuchiki Byakuya. With each exchange, a wound appeared on Kurosaki Ichigo's body, and the body that was already scarred became weaker. Bang! Once again hit by Kuchiki Byakuya, the powerful slash left a deep wound on Kurosaki Ichigo's body, and blood sprayed out. Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly felt dizzy, and after a few steps back, he powerlessly fell to the ground. Cough cough. Shaking his head hard, Kurosaki Ichigo felt that the scene in front of him seemed to become blurred, and the great loss of blood made his vision blurred. In the end, it is only at the level of human. Kuchiki Byakuya looked at Kurosaki Ichigo, who fell to the ground. His voice was cold, and he slowly raised his own Zanpakuto. Wait! Byakuya. Seeing Kuchiki Byakuya seem to intend to give the human teenager a final blow, Shiryukatake on the side opened his mouth to stop him. There were many doubts on this human teenager. Why did he look so similar to Kaien? Why could he see the shadow of Kimura in his movements? Had number 61, 6 rods prison of light. Just as Shiryukatake was about to move his feet, a voice came from upstairs, and then 6 pieces of light suddenly appeared and locked the body of Kuchiki Byakuya. This is... Shiryukatake was first shocked, then his heart moved. This voice turned his head to the upstairs behind, and sure enough, he saw a familiar figure standing there. Yoruchi Shihuin. Feeling the familiar Ryuryoku, Kuchiki Byakuya's face slightly changed. Long time no see, little Byakuya. Yoruchi Shihuin, the person who abandoned Shinigami's glory and escaped from Soul Society, what do you want to do? It's nothing. I was just entrusted by someone to protect him and prevent him from being killed. While speaking, Yoruchi had already appeared in front of Kurosaki Ichigo. She looked at Kurosaki Ichigo, who was about to faint, and shook her head helplessly. Kuchiki Byakuya suddenly thought of something and frowned. Who is it? Helping Kurosaki Ichigo up from the ground, Yoruchi looked at Kuchiki Byakuya and smiled. Yes, the person you think of. Hey! Where are you going? Byakuya. What are those two going to do? Aren't you here to deal with the aftermath? I'm no longer interested. You can do whatever you want. Staring at the direction where Yoruchi left for a long time, Kuchiki Byakuya flung his sleeves, turned around, and left without looking back. At this time, his expression was calm. It was not the usual indifference that ignored everything, but the suppressed coldness. The light flashing in his eyes from time to time seemed to freeze everything. Really, still so casual. Seeing Kuchiki Byakuya performance, Shiryukatake helplessly scratched his head. Although he has grown up and has always been showing people a calm and plain appearance, but in the end, Kuchiki Byakuya is still a willful and casual person. However, Kimura really came back. What is his plan? Thinking of the color flashed in Kuchiki Byakuya's eyes when he left, sure Yukitake felt a headache. Things seemed to become more and more troublesome. First, he heard that Aizen was killed, and now Muyang and Yoruchi, who disappeared for 100 years, suddenly appeared in Seoul society and brought a talented human teenager. I hope you didn't do it. Sure Yukitake looked at the void and whispered. Hoo. Bang! Just as Sure Yukitake was thinking about Muyang, Rukia, who had been very nervous since the appearance of Kuchiki Byakuya, finally could not bear the huge pressure and fell to the ground. Because Byakuya left, she suddenly relaxed, and no wonder she was like this. Ganju, Hanataro, you two come out. Sure Yukitake suddenly turned his head and shouted to one side. Whoosh! Just as Sure Yukitake's voice fell, two figures suddenly fell from the sky and knelt in front of Sure Yukitake. Captain, you are looking for us. You guys really came. Looking at the two subordinates in front of him, Sure Yukitake said in a helpless tone. So. Before Hanataro and Ganju spoke to him, a person suddenly appeared in front of Sure Yukitake. Kyoraku. Sure Yukitake exclaimed when he saw the man in a flower robe in front of him. Well, it seems that a battle just happened here. After standing still, Kyoraku Shunsui immediately felt the trace of Ryuryoku left in the air and said to Sure Yukitake. Captain Kyoraku. Kyoraku waved to Ganju and Hanataro, then Kyoraku Shunsui turned to Sure Yukitake. What's wrong? Feeling the unusual meaning in Kyoraku Shunsui's eyes, Sure Yukitake looked a little serious. You go with me to Old Man Yama first. There is someone waiting. Kyoraku Shunsui waved his hand and pretended to be mysterious. Someone. With a turn of his eyes, combined with what Yoruchi said before, and the subtle expression on Kyoraku Shunsui's face, almost in an instant, Sure Yukitake knew who Kyoraku Shunsui was talking about. Hanataro, report to the 4th Division, saying that one person is fatally injured, and ask the superior to come to rescue him immediately. Well, let's go. Kyoraku, go to see an old friend that we haven't seen for a long time. After arranging things, Sure Yukitake turned to Kyoraku Shunsui and said. It seems that you have guessed it. Kyoraku Shunsui glanced at Sure Yukitake's face, then turned around and raised his hand to press his bamboo hat. Let's go quickly. If we let Old Man Yama and him alone, I really don't know if there will be any problem. Hearing the words of Kyoraku Shunsui, Sure Yukitake also remembered the frequent conflict between Muyang and Yamamoto Genryusai before. He had never seen anyone like Muyang who fought against Yamamoto Genryusai time and time again, and let them stay alone. It was really hard to say what would happen. Although the relationship between Muyang and Yamamoto Genryusai was very good before, things from 100 years ago were still a little affected. Their feet moved, Kyoraku Shunsui and Sure Yukitake, the pair of good friends, rushed to the direction of 1st Division. Kuchiki Byakuya walked on the road home with a cold face. Compared with his usual indifference, his cold face made the passers-by feel a sense of fear. They were all cautious. Just looking at his face, it was clear that Kuchiki Byakuya was in a very bad mood. No one would touch his bad luck at this time. Give me 3 days. After 3 days, I will make him stronger than you. Thinking of what Yoruchi said to him before leaving, Kuchiki Byakuya slightly pulled out a trace of disdain. A mere human, just lucky to obtain the strength of Shinigami. Unexpectedly, he tried to reach the level of captain in 3 days. It was really strange. But Yoruchi, one of the 4 great nobles, the former head of the Shihuin, actually said such words. Such a trampling of the glory belonging to Shinigami was really unforgivable. What's more, he is your little junior brother, little brother Byakuya. Remembering the words of ridicule before Yoruchi left, Kuchiki Byakuya's originally hanging hand unconsciously clenched, his nails deep into the palm of his hand. Muyang. Spitting out such a name, Kuchiki Byakuya's eyes flashed a trace of struggle, and his mind unconsciously recalled the matter of more than 100 years ago when he was taught by Muyang to learn the cutting technique. Closing his eyes, all kinds of emotions fluctuated in his mind. When he opened his eyes again, Kuchiki Byakuya's eyes had already recovered the usual calmness, and once again became the Kuchiki family head who was not moved by emotions and had always been under absolute calmness. The sword in his hand is always only to maintain the glory of Shinigami. As long as it is in front of his eyes, it is his enemy. The sword in his hand is only to protect honor. His own people are only to protect honor. This is his sword, his own people. A cool breeze blew, and several leaves floated down. Kuchiki Byakuya originally clenched fist loosened, and gently put it on Zanpakuto at his waist. In an invisible way, there seemed to be a sound of a knife. Several fallen leaves were instantly divided into two halves as if they were cut by a knife. The broken leaves fell on the water, and the eyes slightly swept the leaves. Kuchiki Byakuya turned and walked to his room. You woke up. Ah. It hurts. This is. The unconscious Kurosaki Ichigo opened his eyes. The first thing that came into his eyes was a blue sky, but the strange thing was that the clouds in the air did not float, and the sky seemed to be very close to him, giving him the feeling as if it was the training ground under the Urahara shop. This is what we got when we were still in Soul Society. The place below Kisuke's store also imitated this place. Hearing Kurosaki Ichigo's voice, Yoruchi, who was leaning on a stone, opened her mouth and said, "An." Suddenly, Kurosaki Ichigo glared, forced himself to stand up, and looked at Yoruchi with a face of indignation. "I didn't save the rest of them, but you don't have to worry." Seeing what Kurosaki Ichigo wanted to say, before he opened his mouth, Yoruchi opened her mouth and explained to him, "It is my limit to leave with you alone. And Yukitake is also there. He is the immediate superior of Rukia. He is a very upright person. He will not make it difficult to save Ganju and Rukia, and the kid of 4th Division. So don't worry, you just stay here and strengthen your strength. At present, you can't win White, but after 3 days, I can train you to be able to defeat him, and then you can personally save all of them." After listening to Yoruichi's explanation, Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes showed a fighting spirit again. For those companions, he must become stronger and then save them all. What should I do? Kurosaki Ichigo looked at Yoruchi, his eyes full of fighting spirit. "I want to tell you something first." Yoruchi glanced at Kurosaki Ichigo with a face full of fighting spirit. Although his injuries had not recovered yet and he could only move for the time being, there was not much time left for him. He could only do this. All Zanpakuto is likely to carry out 2 stages of liberation. The first stage of liberation is called Shirkai, and the second stage of liberation is called Bankai. To be able to carry out 2 stages of liberation is one of the necessary conditions to become a captain. It's mandatory to have Bankai. Yes, that is to say, in addition to Zaraki Kenpachi, everyone has learned Bankai. Under Shirkai and Bankai state, the gap of the same Zanpakuto's combat ability will be different according to personal qualifications and exercise. In general, it is about 5 to 10 times. 10 times. Seeing the astonishment on Kurosaki Ichigo's face, Yoruchi looked very satisfied. The promotion rate is very amazing, right? Because of this. From the Shirkai, Bankai, talented people generally have to go through 10 years of exercise. Hey, that's too long. Of course I know. The reason why it has to go through 10 or 20 years is that it has to go through formal cultivation. Although it is quite dangerous, you will use a completely different way to learn Bankai in 3 days. On the day of execution, Sokayaku Hill. Lifting his hand and pressing his bamboo hat, Kyoraku Shunsui glanced over at Kuchiki Rukia, whose eyes flashed a glimmer. If what Kimura said is true, Aizen will soon come out of the water. Slightly turning his head, his line of sight met with Sure Yukitake on the side, and there was a flash of understanding in the eyes of the 2 people. As two people who had fought side by side for many years, just a look could tell the thoughts of the other side. Shiryukatake turned his eyes away and glanced at Yamamoto Genryusai, who was standing there with his eyes half open and half closed. Later, the three of them had to do a play first. Only in that way, Aizen, who was extremely afraid of Yamamoto Genryusai, would no longer hide himself and come out of the dark. However, Shiryukatake's eyes turned to Kachiki Rukia in the sky. It is hard on Rukia. It is obviously Aizen plot, but it makes her suffer so much pain, both physical and psychological. Boom! As a ball of flames burned, the Sokayaku transformed into a huge phoenix. The balls of flames wrapped around his body and burned, giving off a destructive aura. How shocking! Kyoraku Shunsui said in a low voice as he raised his head to look at the phoenix formed by the Sokayaku in the sky. He had never seen this form of Sokayaku in his life before. But isn't it a deal? This is just to let Aizen relax his vigilance and attract him who is faking his death. Why doesn't it look like Yamamoto is acting? Not good. Thinking of this, Kyoraku Shunsui's eyes suddenly flashed a trace of uneasiness, and he did not consider Yamamoto's character. It was really damn. With Yamamoto's personality, even if he believed Kimura's words, he would not go against Soul Society's rules before there was clear evidence. Since it was an order from the Central 46, he had to strictly carry it out. When he thought of these thoughts in his mind, it was actually just an instant. Kyoraku Shunsui suddenly turned his head and looked at Shiryukatake standing next to him. Just as Kyoraku Shunsui's sight turned around, Shiryukatake also thought of this. After all, they are people who have been with Yamamoto Genryusai for 1,000 years. They are the most clear about the character of Yamamoto Genryusai. It was just a momentary negligence before. Now they have noticed Yamamoto Genryusai's intention. He really wants to kill Rukia. At least at this moment he thinks so. Ong! With a clear cry, the spear that turned into a phoenix rushed toward Kachiki Rukia's delicate body and was about to pierce her body. Not good. Kyoraku Shunsui and Shiryukatake looked at Rukia in the sky. Dang! At this critical moment, a figure suddenly appeared and blocked in front of Kachiki Rukia with a heroic and decisive posture. Zanpakuto, who was holding a kitchen knife in his hand, stood in front of Sokayaku. Fortunately, I caught up. Kyoraku Shunsui and Shiryukatake looked at each other, and there was a flash of joy in their eyes. Fortunately, someone still blocked it. Otherwise, the consequences were really unimaginable. Maybe Rukia would die under the blow just now. How is it possible? Unexpectedly, one person blocked the attack of Sokayaku with the power of 1,000,000 Zanpakuto. Who the hell is this guy? Soifan looked at Kurosaki Ichigo, who blocked the first attack of Sokayaku, and there was a shock in her eyes that was hard to hide. That was the Sokayaku that people talked about. The legendary Sokayaku with the power of 1,000,000 Zanpakuto was actually blocked by a person with Zanpakuto. Yamamoto Genryusai's originally narrowed eyes were half open, looking at Kurosaki Ichigo, who blocked the attack in the air. Is this kid the Kurosaki Ichigo that Kimura said? Amazing. Although it is still very young, it is good to be able to do this level as a human. No wonder Kimura can see it. Is this kid the human that the team members talked about? Kyoraku Shunsui looked at Kurosaki Ichigo and asked Ise Nanao, who was standing behind him. Hearing Kyoraku Shunsui's voice, Ise Nanao recovered from the shock. The human teenager actually blocked an attack of Sokayaku. This fact really surprised her. Habitually pushing her glasses, Ise Nanao suppressed his shock and replied, from the appearance, it is indeed the accident described by the team leader. Is he Kimura's new disciple? He is indeed very powerful. It has only been a few days and he is already so strong. This is definitely the strength of the captain level. As soon as Shiryukatake finished speaking, he felt a sharp aura coming from his side. Even he felt a burst of discomfort. Kurosaki Ichigo, I will not let you go again. Although people are standing below, and there is a long distance between them and Kurosaki Ichigo, but the voice of Kachiki Byakuya is clearly heard in Kurosaki Ichigo's ear. By shrinking slightly, it is even too late to put Rukia down in his arms. Kurosaki Ichigo's body twisted, and Zanpakuto in his hand suddenly threw behind him. Dang! A sound hit Kachiki Byakuya's Zanpakuto. One hit caught Kachiki Byakuya attack. Kurosaki Ichigo moved his feet, and his body instantly disappeared from the execution platform, and then appeared in front of Abarai Renji who just arrived. Rukia will be handed over to you, take care of her. Throwing Rukia into the arms of Renji, Kurosaki Ichigo only had time to say this sentence. Kachiki Byakuya had come to his front again, and Zanpakuto in his hand mercilessly cut down his head. Dang! Once again blocking Kachiki Byakuya slash, Kurosaki Ichigo took 2 steps back and said, I said last time, your attack has been seen through by me. Although he said this, Kurosaki Ichigo's heart was full of shock. In these 3 days, he was trained to the death under the guidance of Yoruchi. Not only did he learn Bankai, but his strength in the normal state also had a significant improvement, but why did he feel that Kachiki Byakuya also became stronger, much stronger than when he met a few days ago? Stepping on the ground, Kurosaki Ichigo waved the Zanpakuto in his hand to attack Kachiki Byakuya, but it was easily dodged by him. Not only that, but he also retaliated. This guy. With his extraordinary reaction ability to block Kachiki Byakuya's attack, Kurosaki Ichigo stepped on the ground and once again opened the distance. This guy was a little strange. There was no change in speed and strength. His Ryoryoku also did not change, but why did he feel that he became stronger? He was very casual when waving the knife, but the timing and angle of the attack were very tricky. It was like. In his mind, he unconsciously recalled the scene when he fought with Muyang. Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes flashed. Yes, it was like the feeling when he fought with Muyang. Although there was still a distance away from Muyang's strength. By the way, it seemed that Mr. Kisuke Urahara said that this guy was once Kimura's student. Kurosaki Ichigo shook the Zanpakuto in his hand. He was no longer the previous him. It was impossible for Kachiki Byakuya to defeat himself easily. With this in mind, Kurosaki Ichigo's foot pointed, and his body instantly appeared in front of Kachiki Byakuya. The huge Zanpakuto in his hand seemed to be light as if nothing, and a cold light flashed on the tip of the knife, stabbing at Kachiki Byakuya's head. Almost in an instant, Kachiki Byakuya did not have time to react, and Kurosaki Ichigo's body had appeared in front of him like a ghost. The Zanpakuto in his hand made a harsh sound, piercing the air and stabbing at his head. Seeing Kurosaki Ichigo's speed, Kachiki Byakuya's pupil slightly contracted. This speed was faster than the last time he saw it. What did Yoruchi do to this guy? Kachiki Byakuya thought in his mind, but his body was not slow, his head slightly tilted and let Kurosaki Ichigo attack. Just as Kachiki Byakuya turned his head and let Kurosaki Ichigo attack, Kurosaki Ichigo twisted his wrist, and then his Zanpakuto, which had already pierced through Kachiki Byakuya's ear, suddenly changed direction and cut across Kachiki Byakuya's body. There was a sudden warning in his heart. Kachiki Byakuya almost subconsciously leaned over, but it was still a little slow. Kachiki Byakuya clearly felt the cold blade across his cheek, and a trace of blood slowly flowed from his face. Feeling the touch left by the blood from his cheek, Kachiki Byakuya's eyes were cold, and he was actually hurt by a human. It was really unforgivable. Scatter, Senbenzakura. Countless blades shining with pink colors danced in the air. After the gorgeous beauty, there was a cold killing intent hidden. This was something that Kurosaki Ichigo had long experienced. With a tap of his feet, Kurosaki Ichigo's body suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already beside Kachiki Byakuya. There is a flaw in your ability. As he spoke, Zanpakuto in Kurosaki Ichigo's hand turned and slashed at Kachiki Byakuya. Heido number 33. Under the blade of Kurosaki Ichigo, Kuchiki Byakuya gently stretched out a hand, his palm facing Kurosaki Ichigo's body, and without turning his head, he whispered, "Sukatsui." At the moment when Kuchiki Byakuya stretched out his palm, Kurosaki Ichigo knew that it was not good. Sure enough, before Kurosaki Ichigo's chop fell, a blue burst flame had been fired from Kuchiki Byakuya's palm, and the violent impact instantly sent Kurosaki Ichigo flying. "Old man Yama, let's go first." Looking at Kurosaki Ichigo and Kuchiki Byakuya who were fighting fiercely over there, Kyoraku Shunsui pressed his bamboo hat and turned to Yamamoto Genryusai. Huh? Yamamoto Genryusai's eyes narrowed. After Kyoraku Shunsui finished, he did not wait for Yamamoto Genryusai to say anything. He directly grabbed Shiryukate's clothes, stepped a little, and their body instantly rushed to the distance. "Captain." Seeing Kyoraku Shunsui leaving quickly, Ise Nanak also depart. Seeing Kyoraku Shunsui and Shiryukate leave, Yamamoto Genryusai's face did not change, but the eyes turned to look at the situation of Kurosaki Ichigo and Kuchiki Byakuya. The strength of Captain Kuchiki is naturally unquestionable. Although there is a little gap compared to Kyoraku and others, he is also worthy of the identity of captain. On the other hand, the human teenager can actually fight with Kuchiki Byakuya to such a degree, it is really rare and precious. Retracting the sight of the battle over there, feeling the Kyoraku Shunsui and Shiryukate Ryuryokas getting farther and farther, Yamamoto Genryusai's mouth slightly pulled up. From before, there has never been a kid who can escape under his pursuit. Swish. He did not see any movements of Yamamoto Genryusai, and his figure disappeared from the place instantly. "Captain Commander." Seeing Yamamoto Genryusai's body suddenly disappear, Sure Sasuke standing on the side cried out, and then he also moved his feet and rushed in the direction that Yamamoto Genryusai left. "Captain." Kaion Kotetsu and Yamada Hanataro looked at Shiryukate, who was dragged away by Kyoraku Shunsui, and moved his feet to chase in the direction where they left. Bang! The moment the two of them moved, a petite figure suddenly appeared in front of them, and then Kaion Kotetsu and Yamada Hanataro only saw a flash in front of their eyes, and then they felt a strong force coming from their chest, and their bodies fell to the ground weakly. "You guys have completely abandoned your reservedness as Shinigami of Godai 13. Kicking Kaion Kotetsu and Yamada Hanataro to the ground, Soifan said to the two of them with undisguised killing intent in her eyes. "Captain, that, Kaion Kotetsu and Yamada Hanataro didn't do anything against Shinigami's honor, did they?" Looking at Kaion Kotetsu and Yamada Hanataro who fell to the ground, Maeda suddenly had a feeling of guilt, so he carefully took 2 steps forward and said to Soifan with low eyebrows. "What did you say?" "Maeda." Soifan was stunned and turned her eyes slightly to look at Maeda and asked, her tone full of strict killing intent. "No, I didn't say anything." Hearing Soifan's cold voice, Maeda immediately retreated a few steps and waved his hand while retreating, his face full of fear. For his own captain's means, Maeda was clear. Kaion. Seeing that his sister was kicked to the ground by 2nd Division Captain, Isane Kotetsu moved her feet and was about to go forward to check. "Wait, Isane." Isane Kotetsu had not yet taken a step when Unohana Retsu, who had been standing beside her, suddenly opened her mouth to stop her behavior. "Captain." Isane Kotetsu turned her head and looked at his captain in confusion. "So." At the moment Isane Kotetsu turned around, a figure suddenly rushed over from the distance. Several people on Sokayaku Hill only saw a black shadow flash away, and then the figure of Soifan, who was standing there before, had disappeared. "Ah, what's going on? Where's Captain?" Maeda only felt a gust of wind blowing in front of him, and then Captain who was standing in front of him had disappeared. Kaion. It's too late to care about why Captain Soifan suddenly disappeared. Isane Kotetsu now only remembers her sister. She took a few steps forward to her sister and quickly began to treat her. Boom! A violent roar suddenly came from the woods under Sokayaku Hill, followed by two powerful collisions of Ryuryoku. Captain! Feeling Soifon coming from below, Maeda moved his body and was about to rush down. In any case, the duty of vice-captain is to protect captain. Schwa! Bang! Just as Maeda moved, he saw a figure flash in front of him and then he lost consciousness. You really came, Muyang. Unohana Retsu put her hands in front of her and looked at the person who suddenly appeared and knocked Maeda unconscious. Her tone was as calm as ever, as if nothing could change her mood. This is. Compared with Unohana Retsu calm, Isane Kotetsu's reaction was much more rich. She suddenly stood up straight and put her hand on her zanpakuto. She looked at the unknown person in front of her with vigilance. That man suddenly appeared and casually knocked out the deputy captain. Whether it was his speed or strength, Isane Kotetsu felt extremely afraid. If such a person was an enemy. You are too nervous, Miss Vice Captain. Isane Kotetsu only felt a flash in front of her eyes, and then a voice sounded in her ear. When she heard the voice in her ear, Isane Kotetsu trembled. When did he come to her side without her even noticing it? This guy. Under the agitation of her emotions, Isane Kotetsu suddenly pulled out her own zanpakuto and swung her blade at his side. I said, you are too nervous, Miss Vice Captain. He casually stretched out his hand, and in the horrified eyes of Isane Kotetsu, Muyang used his two fingers to catch her zanpakuto. Leave, Isane. Seeing that Isane Kotetsu were fooled by Muyang, Unohana Retsu did not change her expression and just softly asked her to leave. Then Unohana Retsu turned her eyes to Muyang and asked in the usual calm tone, after 100 years, you suddenly returned to Soul Society. So, what do you want to do, Mr. Kimura? 100 years? Return to Soul Society? Upon hearing Unohana Retsu's words, Isane Kotetsu said in a low voice in confusion. According to the Captain Unohana, this guy seemed to have been a member of Soul Society, and he knew the Captain Unohana. Muyang, the man who once served as the captain of Godiai 13 Division for 100 years, completed the study of Spirit Arts Academy in only half a year, graduated as the first, was appointed as the vice captain at the beginning of graduation, and was known as the unprecedented genius of Soul Society. What? This guy? After listening to Unohana Retsu's introduction of Muyang, Isane Kotetsu was completely shocked. He graduated from Spirit Arts Academy in half a year, and after just graduated, he became the vice captain, and he was a captain for more than 100 years. What kind of person was this guy? I didn't expect Captain Unohana to remember everything about me so clearly. It really makes me feel flattered. After listening to the introduction of Unohana Retsu, Muyang smiled slightly. It was a good feeling to be remembered. But I came to see you this time without any big deal. I just want to ask Captain Unohana to watch a play and save a person. Oh. Hearing Muyang's words, Unohana Retsu turned her eyes and said to Isane, Isane, inform the healing team in the team now and deal with the wounded here. I will go with Mr. Kimura. Captain. Hearing Unohana Retsu's order, Isane Kotetsu called out worriedly. Will the captain really be fine with this guy? Don't worry, it's okay. Let's go, Mr. Kimura. Where are you talking about? I'm looking forward to it. I won't let you down. Muyang turned around and smiled at Unohana Retsu. His feet moved and his body suddenly disappeared from where he was. At the same time, Unohana Retsu followed him and disappeared instantly. So fast. Seeing the two of them disappear in front of her, but not even a trace of them could be seen, Isane Kotetsu could not help but feel a little defeated. The difference in strength was actually so great. Is this Ryuryoku Ichigo? The person fighting with him is Kuchiki Byakuya. What an interesting battle. Zaraki Kenpachi keenly felt two violent collisions from the direction of Sokayaku Hill. One of them was Kurosaki Ichigo, who had fought with him before, and the other was Kuchiki Byakuya, whom he had always wanted to challenge. Boom! Not long after feeling Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryuryoku, a terrible Ryuryoku suddenly burst from the distance. The blazing Ryuryoku dyed the sky in red, as if to burn everything. This is the old man. Zaraki Kenpachi looked at the sky in the distance and felt the majestic and terrible Ryuryoku of Yamamoto Genryusai. The corner of his mouth slowly opened, revealing a slightly terrible smile. Hey, even Captain Commander has taken action, things are getting more and more interesting. Just at the moment when Captain Commander Ryuryoku burst out. Well, it's about time. A dark-skinned blind man slightly tilted his head and felt the collision of Ryuryoku in the distance. Then his body flashed and disappeared from the place. And at this time, Chur Hitsugaya came to the central conference hall with Matsumoto Ranjaku. The two looked at the people lying in the hall with horror. The 40 sages and 6 presiding judges of the Central 46 were all killed. This man. Unohana Retsu fixed her eyes on Muyang in front of her. This man's body seemed to be covered with a layer of mist, making it impossible to see his heart clearly. Just like his choice 100 years ago, everything about this man was like a mystery. Captain Unohana. Just as Unohana Retsu was distracted, Muyang suddenly slowed down, falling a few steps behind and walking side by side with Unohana Retsu. What? Awakened by Muyang's voice, Unohana Retsu turned her face and looked at the man beside her with a hint of inquiry in her eyes. After Aizen's death, it is you who have been in contact with his corpse, right? Hearing the word death and corpse that Muyang emphasized, Unohana Retsu frowned slightly. Listening to Muyang, it seemed that there was still some secret between them. Although there were some doubts in her heart, Unohana Retsu still answered, yes. Then Captain Unohana, have you noticed something unusual? Hearing Muyang's question, Unohana Retsu's body slightly paused, and there was a trace of surprise in her eyes. When checking Captain Aizen's body, she did notice something unusual, but why did Muyang ask? Because there was no exact evidence, she had never told anyone. Even Aizen did not know the few doubts that she had buried in her heart. Although Unohana Retsu concealed her mood fluctuations very well, Muyang was still keenly aware of her mood fluctuations at that moment. As expected of Captain Unohana, as the person who has been in contact with Aizen's corpse for the longest time, you can still detect that slight unnoticeably uncoordinated. You mean? Unohana Retsu suddenly stopped. Looking at Muyang standing next to her, her face gradually became serious. The guess that had been suppressed in her heart gradually emerged. At the same time, there was a sense of tension. If her guess was really correct, it was really bad. Let's go. The truth is just ahead. Turning his head to look at Unohana Retsu who was standing still, Muyang stepped on the ground and rushed forward again. It was the Central 46 Underground Meeting Hall. Soul Society is going to change the sky. He raised his head to look at the calm sky, but Unohana Retsu felt that under the calm, there was a turbulent undercurrent. If she was not careful, the whole Soul Society would suffer a great blow. Aizen. Chur Hitsugaya, who rushed back in a hurry, looked at the person in front of him with a shocked face. The familiar face was Aizen, who had originally died. Hey, Chur Hitsugaya. Seeing Chur Hitsugaya panting, Aizen smiled and greeted him. What's going on? Are you really Aizen? Of course, you saw it, didn't you? It's like a fake bag. However, in any case, you came back earlier than I expected. Captain Chur Hitsugaya. Sorry, it seems that we met in the wrong time. Ikimara Jin, who stood behind Aizen, smiled and apologized after hearing Aizen's words, but the iconic smile on his face and his joking tone did not sound embarrassed at all. What are you talking about? Chur Hitsugaya only felt that his head was a little insufficient. Originally, in his judgment, Aizen and Ikimara Jin were the identity of the enemy, and the person who killed Aizen was also Ikimara Jin, but now looking at the performance of these two people, it really was not like the enemy. Instead, it was more like companions. No. No. More accurately, it should be the relationship between subordinates and superiors. Isn't dispersing the enemy's combat power the foundation of tactics? Isn't that right, Jin? You said enemy. Hearing Aizen say the word enemy, Hitsugaya no longer has a trace of doubt in his heart. From the beginning, they were played by Aizen. All of this is just a play performed by Aizen and Ikemara Jin. Where is Hinamori? The face of Hinamori suddenly flashed in his mind, and Hitsugaya suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Since Aizen is an enemy, then Hinamori is. His eyes stopped on the door behind Aizen and Ikemara Jin. Hitsugaya keenly felt a faint Ryuryoku from behind the door, and an indescribable panic rose in his heart. With a movement of his feet, Hitsugaya's body instantly appeared behind the door. Boom! Seeing Hinamori lying in a pool of blood, Hitsugaya seemed to be struck by lightning. At that moment, he seemed to feel that the whole sky had collapsed. It's a pity that he found out. Ikemara Jin leaned slightly and said, but there was no pity in his tone. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I should cut her into pieces. At least don't let you find out. Seeing that Hitsugaya looked like he was hit, Aizen did not hesitate to say, first suppressing the enemy psychologically, which was his favorite way. What is going on? Aizen, Ikemara Jin. When did you start working together? It was from the beginning. Before you played dead. Aizen. Why do you still not understand? I mean, from the beginning, since I became captain, I have never thought of letting others be my vice-captain. So, until now, not only Hinamori, but also me, your subordinates and all the other Shinigami, are all deceived by you. Turning his head, looking at Aizen, who had become rogue not far away, Hitsugaya gritted his teeth and said. In fact, I don't want to lie, but none of you can understand my real intentions. You mean we can't understand? Hitsugaya looked at Aizen in front of him, this person who appeared in front of him for so long with the image of a gentle senior. The anger in his heart surged up again and again. You should be very clear that Hinamori admired you very much. She joined Godei 13 because of you. In order to help you, she worked very hard and finally became a vice-captain. Of course I know, there is no easier to manipulate than people who admire me. So I chose her as my subordinate. Ah. Hitsugaya looked at Aizen incredulously. The glimmer of hope in his heart disappeared without a trace. Is this guy really Aizen? It is completely different from the people he knew before. Is this real him, he said? Now is a good opportunity. There is one thing you have to remember, Hitsugaya. Adoration is the farthest emotion to understand. Boom. Hearing Aizen's words, Hitsugaya could no longer suppress the anger in his heart and suddenly pulled out his own Zanpakuto from behind. Bankai. Daiguren Hyorinmaru. A strong Ryuryoku suddenly rose, and a chill spread from Hitsugaya, like it was going to freeze everything. Aizen, I am going to kill you now. Hitsugaya held his Zanpakuto and looked at Aizen opposite with murderous eyes. Don't talk too big, this will only make you look weaker. Hearing Hitsugaya talk in front of him, Aizen said with a smile. Although he has the title of genius on his head, but as long as he can reach the level of captain, which one is not a genius? Hitsugaya is still too young, whether in psychological or in strength. Hearing Aizen ridiculed him, Hitsugaya's face was tight, holding a knife with both hands, and suddenly swung it down. Facing his Bankai, Aizen actually dared to be so arrogant, really too arrogant. Schwa. Puff. No no. Hitsugaya only saw a flower in front of him, and then blood splashed, and the body fell to the ground weakly. The scenery is good. Aizen waved his hand and threw the blood on Zanpakuto, and then slowly put the sword back into the sheath. Although the season is not yet here, it is good to see ice at this time. Then let's go, Jin. After defeating Chur Hitsugaya, Aizen said to Ikemura Jin in a relaxed tone. Although Chur Hitsugaya's strength is insignificant to him, but as he said before, dispersing the enemy's combat power is the foundation of tactics. If the captain of Godai 13 work together, it is really a little troublesome for his plan. Well. Suddenly, Aizen, who was about to move his feet, stopped and his eyes turned to the direction of the gate. The usual relaxed expression on his face disappeared, but there was a rare solemn look. Obviously, even he felt a little afraid of the identity of the person who came. It's rare to meet an old friend today. I don't know what advice you have, Mr. Kimura. I'm not worthy to be your advisor, Aizen, you are too polite. Muyang looked at Aizen in front of him and smiled very brightly. Although he did not see a surprised look on Aizen's face, Muyang still felt a burst of comfort in his heart. After so long, today he could finally vent out the grievances he had been holding back for so many years. You are really here, Aizen. Unohana Retsu, who followed Muyang, looked at Aizen not far away and said with a gloomy face. She did not expect that this person actually played a play and played all Soul Society's people in the palm of his hand. Aizen looked at the two people opposite him and whispered, Captain Unohana, I don't think it is strange that you can guess this. I am still thinking if you'd really come or not. I just didn't expect that Mr. Kimura actually appeared with you. When did you start to intervene in this matter? Oh. You are so smart. Why don't you guess? No need, because there is no need. Aizen looked at Muyang with a smile of victory on his face. No matter when you started to get involved in this matter, it is meaningless to talk about this now, because now I have appeared in front of you without hesitation. Do you want to say that you have already expected everything? I thought you should already know about it after experiencing the thing from 100 years ago. Oh, including this, did you expect it? Muyang chuckled, and then a light flashed, and his Zanpakuto with a cold murderous look appeared in front of Aizen. Dang! This won't do, Mr. Kimura. Ikemura Jin stepped and his body stood in front of Aizen. He used his own Zanpakuto to block Muyang's tentative attack. Although it was not difficult to see from his slightly trembling arm that blocking Muyang's attack was a bit difficult for him, but his face still had the trademark fox-like smile. I really didn't expect that the young boy had grown to the extent that he could block my attack. Do you still not understand? Mr. Kimura, everything about you is expected by me. Aizen stood still and did not move. From the beginning, he knew that Muyang's attack would not affect him. Oh. The corner of Muyang's mouth revealed a playful smile. I will stab your left shoulder next time, Aizen. Oh. He also said this before. Aizen's line of sight swept over Chur Hitsugaya, who was lying on the ground motionless, and the corner of his mouth showed a smile again, a scornful smile. I will tell you what I said to him before, don't talk too big, it will only make you more weak. Puff. Aizen's words just finished, the smile on his face has not been closed, and suddenly saw a brilliant knife flash in front of his eyes. The speed of the knife light is so fast that he did not even have time to react. He only felt a sting on his left shoulder, and then a blood shot out from his body. What? Muyang's previous attack. The speed is so fast that it is simply shocking. Several people present did not see how he did it. They only saw a flash of blade light, and then Aizen's left shoulder sprayed a blood. This speed. Ikemura Jin's eyes, which had been closed all the time, slightly opened a crack. That speed was faster than his own Shinso, at least in such a short distance. It was impossible to be faster than him. I will return this sentence to you. Look at the astonishment in your eyes, this is what you did not expect. Muyang looked at Aizen who was injured in front of him and smiled very happily. Although he had not completely defeated him, it was also a little revenge. You. Aizen looked at Muyang in front of him and gritted his teeth, but in the end, there was still some fear in his eyes. Muyang's blow just now really scared him. If he attacked him one more time, he might not be able to avoid the blow, because he did not see how Muyang did it. He just saw Muyang raise his hand, and then his Zanpakuto suddenly stabbed him. Seems like you underestimated me too much, Aizen. Looking at Aizen in front of him, Muyang suddenly curled his lips and said, "Fight me, use your Kaika Suigetsu." Hearing Muyang like a reminder, Aizen's eyes regained some spirit again. Yes, he still has Kaika Suigetsu. Everyone can't crack Kaika Suigetsu's power. As long as he opens his Kaika Suigetsu, even if Muyang is powerful, he will never be his opponent. After encouraging himself in his heart, Aizen's face returned to a calm smile, as if he had mastered everything. Muyang, I have to say that I really underestimated you, but next time you won't have a chance, you should feel pity. Aizen looked at Muyang with a confident smile and said, "You should have stabbed my heart just now, so there may be a chance to get rid of me, but you will never have a chance now. That will be the last time you touch me. Let's go, Jin." Hearing Aizen's words, Ikamaru Jin took out a roll of gauze from his arms and waved it, and then his and Aizen's bodies disappeared from the place. Muyang stood there quietly, watching Ikamaru Jin and Aizen leave without making any move, only showing a mysterious smile at the corner of his mouth. As expected, it's still the Sokayaku Hill. Sensing the few people who had appeared in the Sokayaku Hill, the smile on Muyang's lips grew even wider. "Captain Unohana. I understand. Leave it to me." He smiled at Muyang, and Unohana Retsu slowly walked to Chur Hitsugaya and Hinamori, pulling out her Zanpakuto. "I will take first aid measures for Chur Hitsugaya and Hinamori first. I am not talking about this." Muyang stepped and appeared beside Chur Hitsugaya. "I know a little about emergency treatment. Let me deal with it for the two of them first. Captain Unohana, you should inform the rest of the people here first. You know, compared to me who has been away for 100 years, your words are more convincing." Unohana Retsu nodded. Aizen's current position. Sokayaku Hill. I see. Withdrawing her own Zanpakuto, Unohana Retsu stretched out her left hand, Baikud number 77, Tentikra. "All captains of Gotei 13, Vice Captain, as well as all the travelers, I am 4th Division Captain Unohana Retsu, this is an emergency, the next words I said are all true." "No way." Everyone who was in different places of Soul Society heard the notification from Unohana Retsu and all looked stunned. Before this, no one would think that such a thing would happen, this was simply a disaster for Soul Society. "Old man Yama, you heard it too." Kyoraku Shunsui, who was receiving the long-lost training of Yamamoto Genryusai, stopped and said, "I have not yet been old enough to not hear things." Yamamoto Genryusai looked at Kyoraku Shunsui in front of him and taught him a lesson, "But Kyoraku, your strength actually dropped to such a degree, it really disappoints me. After this matter, come to 1st Division to see me." "I'm afraid I have to decline, Commander, I have a lot of things to deal with in my team." Kyoraku Shunsui has not finished speaking yet, but Yamamoto Genryusai has disappeared from the place, apparently not going to give him a chance to bargain. "Now can you tell me your thoughts, Mr. Kimura?" After dealing with Chur Hitsugaya and Hinamori's injuries, Unohana Retsu turned to Muyang. Her eyes were calm, but it seemed to be able to see through all the camouflage and stared straight into the depths of Muyang's heart. "What thoughts?" Muyang looked at Unohana Retsu strangely and asked. "From your explanation of Aizen ability and the situation when you brought me here before, you should have expected today's matter. You knew these things from the beginning, right? Including the matter that Vice Captain Hinamori and Captain Hitsugaya might be harmed by Aizen." Seeing that Muyang did not open his mouth to deny, Unohana Retsu then said, "Since you have expected all of this, why did you not hurry on the way, but deliberately slowed down and let these things happen?" "I do know all these things." After listening to Unohana Retsu analysis, Muyang admitted easily. Facing her scrutinizing eyes, Muyang shrugged and said, "Soul Society is too dull. In order to meet the future battles, I think that what they are suffering now is necessary. Looking at Muyang's magnanimous eyes, Unohana Retsu was silent and then turned her eyes and walked to the two lying there. I admit that what you said is reasonable, but as a medical personnel, my first priority is always to consider injuries. I know. Muyang spread out his hands and turned his head to the direction of the Sokayaku hill. Then, goodbye. He looked at Unohana Retsu who was standing there with complicated eyes. Muyang's body swayed and rushed to the direction of Sokayaku hill. There was still a battle waiting for him there. Although it was unrealistic to want to defeat Aizen, it was still possible to leave something for him or leave something behind. Sokayaku hill. Today's hill is really lively. First, it was an execution that was rare to see in 100 years. It attracted all kinds of people. They fought one after another around the hill, and then the 5th Division captain, Aizen, who originally died, suddenly appeared. Together with him, there was also the 3rd Division captain Ikamaru Jin, 9th Division captain Sen Kan-aim, and of course, Abarai Renji who was holding Kuchiki Rukia. Hurry up and put Kuchiki Rukia down, and then get out, Abarai Renji. Aizen looked at Abarai Renji who was holding Kuchiki Rukia in front of him and said impatiently. Although Muyang's appearance was not beyond his expectation, Muyang's strength was beyond Aizen's expectation. He did not have time to waste with Abarai Renji now. No one knew if there would be any more changes. I will not let her go. Since you won't let go, I will cut off your hand holding her. Reaching out from his waist to pull out his Zanpakuto, Aizen stared at Abarai Renji, and his eyes did not hide his killing intent. Holding Rukia in one hand, and Renji holding his own Zanpakuto in the other hand, with his serious injuries now, facing 3 captain-level enemies is really not a wise thing. Not to mention fighting, even saving his life is an extravagant hope. However, even if he dies, he will not let go this time. Dang! A familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of Renji, blocking Aizen's attack. Until this time, a drop of sweat slid down from the forehead of Renji. He really did not expect that even if he learned Bankai now, there was still such a big gap compared to the real captain level. The previous fight with Captain Kuchiki was like this, and now it was the same in the face of Aizen. Brother Byakuya. Rukia, who was lying in the arms of Renji, looked up at the person in front of her and screamed. She did not expect that at this time, it was Kuchiki Byakuya who saved her. Brother Byakuya still cares about me. With this thought in mind, Rukia's heart suddenly rose a sweet feeling. Cough puff. Just as such a thought flashed through Rukia's heart, Kuchiki Byakuya, who was in front of them, suddenly coughed, and then spat out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, his physical condition was not very good. Big brother is injured. Looking at Kuchiki Byakuya's body, Kuchiki Rukia immediately found several bloody wounds, showing the damage that Kuchiki Byakuya had suffered before this. Are you all right, Rukia? Just when Rukia's heart was worried about Kuchiki Byakuya's wound, Kurosaki Ichigo, dressed in a tight windbreaker, came to her side and asked worriedly. Protect. Rukia turned to look at Kurosaki Ichigo, who came to her side. There were also several obvious wounds on his body. Obviously, he was not unscathed in the previous battle. Kurosaki Ichigo, you can leave now. What happens next has nothing to do with you. This is the matter of Gotei 13. Kuchiki Byakuya stared at Aizen standing opposite him, and at the same time he spoke to Kurosaki Ichigo standing beside him. Captain Unohana has made everything clear in the notice just now. All of this is the conspiracy of Soul Society's traitor, Aizen. In this case, Ichigo have nothing to do about this fiasco involving Gotei 13. Now what he has to do is to use the sword in his hand to eradicate the enemy in front of him and maintain the glory of Soul Society. And his own protection. You are joking. This guy is going to kill Rukia. How can it have nothing to do with me? Kurosaki Ichigo looked at Aizen, who stood opposite him and looked harmless. Is this guy? He actually planned such a thing. You don't have to argue. Since you insist on stopping me, I will kill you all. Anyway, sweeping one or two dust. There is no difference for the eyes. Aizen, is this the last thing you want to say as the sinner of Soul Society? Kuchiki Byakuya looked coldly at Aizen opposite him. Although his power was consumed in the battle with Kurosaki Ichigo just now, Kuchiki Byakuya did not think that he would lose to him. Moreover, this guy not only trampled the glory of being Shinigami, but also hurt his feelings as an elder brother. It was really unforgivable. As soon as the voice fell, Kuchiki Byakuya stretched out his hand, and the cherry blossom blade suddenly flew up and surged in the direction of Aizen. This speed is faster than what he showed before. Kurosaki Ichigo, who was standing on the side, saw the Senbonzakura Kagyoshi controlled by Kuchiki Byakuya. He was suddenly shocked. Just now, his battle with Kuchiki Byakuya was just halfway through, and he was interrupted by Unohana Retsunotis. He originally thought that this guy had shown a strong strength, but he did not expect that the speed of his control of the blade could be improved so much. If you control it with your hands, the speed of Senbonzakura Kagyoshi is twice as fast as when you control it with your eyes. Kuchiki Byakuya said softly like an explanation. Although he said that to Kurosaki Ichigo before, in fact, in his heart, he had admitted Kurosaki Ichigo. His strength had completely reached the level of captain, and he was Muyang's student. At least his footwork and cutting skills must have been learned from Muyang. Really too naive. Just as Kurosaki Ichigo was surprised by the speed of Kuchiki Byakuya Senbonzakura, a slightly playful voice suddenly sounded in their ears. Nani? Impossible. Hearing the voice suddenly remembered in their ears, Kuchiki Byakuya and Kurosaki Ichigo's pupils suddenly contracted. In the situation where they were unaware, Aizen had already come to their side. He was clearly standing beside Ikamaru Jin before. Puff. A bright light flashed, and Kuchiki Byakuya and Kurosaki Ichigo fell to the ground powerlessly. Although it was not a fatal injury, the two of them no longer had the ability to move. Is this Kaika Suigetsu? Kuchiki Byakuya looked at the shadow of Aizen, who gradually disappeared not far away, and asked. This is Kaika Suigetsu. Even if you know, there is no way to avoid Kaika Suigetsu. Aizen casually answered Kuchiki Byakuya's question. In any case, even if he answered, they absolutely could not find a way to crack it. Instead, it could make them feel a sense of despair in their hearts, making them shrink in the future battles with themselves. Aizen walked to the front of Kuchiki Rukia. The three people who protected her before were now all cleaned up. She could only helplessly watch Aizen reach out to her and drag her up from the ground violently. Reaching out, he took out a small thing from his arms. Aizen gently pressed it, and then a strange thing appeared around the ground. Reaching out, he took out Hyaku from Kuchiki Rukia's chest. Aizen's face showed a smile. Finally, he took out this little thing. Because he was threatened by Muyang, he did not even have time to explain to Kurosaki Ichigo and others. Now that he finally took it out, he could also be relieved. Oh. The wound on the body recovered so quickly. It can actually take things out without hurting the spirit body. It is really a great technique. Kisuke is really a smart guy. Putting away Hyaku, Aizen saw the wound on Kuchiki Rukia's chest that gradually disappeared and could not help but praise. For powerful people, he was always generous with his own praise, such as Kisuke with excellent intelligence and Muyang with strong strength. But you are useless. Aizen picked up Rukia, who fell at his feet, and there was no emotion in his eyes, just like holding a dead object, and Rukia was also frightened by the previous thing at this time, her face full of horror. Kill her, Jin. Since Lord Aizen has spoken, then I have no other way. Hearing Aizen's instructions, Ikamaru Jin gently put his hand on the Zanpakuto at his waist, with a fox-like smile on his face, and his closed eyes made people unable to see through the real thoughts in his heart. If I were you, I wouldn't do this. Just as Ikamaru Jin's hand was on his Zanpakuto, a voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Shwa! A dazzling knife light flashed, and at the moment when the sound came in his ear, Ikemara Jin had turned around, and at the same time, Zanpakuto in his hand was instantly unsheathed and released in an instant.